What is good, folks? And thanks so much for checking out this new episode of Missing Chapters. I'm your host, AEBeats. So I spent a lot of time trying to come up with an intro for today's show to cleverly introduce my amazing guest. I had this pretty sweet short story all queued up and laid out detailing my first encounter with a musical instrument while living in Japan. But after listening to it a few times, it just didn't feel right. It didn't quite make the impact I wanted to convey about this fantastic interview we're about to hear. However, I did keep on coming back to this clip that I'm about to play you right now because I believe that it sums up today's episode really well.
The question was, if I really loved music, why don't I want to learn everything there is to know about it?
That voice you just heard, that was local composer, songwriter, and vocalist Jamie Searle. His passion for music is extremely inspiring, as you'll hear today, and I've honestly not met many folks that have a true love for the art like Jamie does. Now, my initial purpose in talking with Jamie was to ask him his thoughts regarding a conversation I frequently have with artists, which is, does music theory help or hinder songwriting? Some camps think that if you're going to master songwriting, you need to understand how to speak the language, while other camps believe that too many rules and boundaries just crush creativity. And truth be told, you'd be really surprised about how many songwriters know little to no theory, which honestly, in my opinion, is the beauty with music, you know? Everyone can take part. Can you hum a tune? Sweet, you're part of the club. Let's go ahead and write something right now. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into this interview. I want to really thank Jamie. We sat down for quite a while and just talked about a bunch of fun things. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode today. So here we go. Missing chapters. Missing chapters. Missing chapters.
Chapter 1.
You made the jump that I wanted to make. So you went back and you got your composition degree, essentially.
I didn't get the degree.
Okay.
I did go to school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it wasn't... I basically, I was there, it was a long road because at 23, and I say this exact same story because it is absolutely true.
Speaking to the mic.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
We're going to start
are we recording now?
Yeah, man,
okay, cool.
We're going.
Good,
Conversations.
Good. Perfect. So this, so a question hit me. And I just remember, like, it, hit me.
Right.
I stood still in my living room, and the question was, if I really loved music, why don't I want to learn everything there is to know about it? And I was like, I do. And it was, the next week I realized, well, here are all the skills I'm lacking, quite a bit. If I want to know as much as humanly possible about all of this stuff. So it was the next week I started to look up Johns County Community College classes, and went down, started to go down that road of learning theory and keyboarding skills and all of this. And, I was in community college, Johns County Community and Longview for 3 years before I auditioned for the conservatory. Oh. And so I was getting all this theory and all of these different things out of the way. But I had a teacher. She was like, you could do this. You could get a music degree and all of these things. You're good enough. And so I auditioned and sure enough did. And then I had quit my first band, It's Over, at that time. And so it was like I just went full throttle. There, but I was only there for 2 years because it started to become like this thing where I'm compositionally speaking, there's preaching a lot about aesthetic philosophy.
Okay, explain that. So,
okay, like the composers, the teachers that were there were very much influenced by atonality, Aeolian type of music, which is by chance, John Cage, people who were like not making anything that was like sounded good.
Sounded good to like the average person?
The average listener. I mean, it was the thing is like they were going, okay, well, we're kind of done with melody.
Really?
We're done with like consistent rhythms for the most part.
Okay.
And so what they wanted to do is just and I'd go to a bunch of these concerts because I'm open-minded.
Sure.
Let's check this out. And it was always just like, this sounds so random.
Okay.
All of this
super
sounds
artsy,
super random, and just like screeches and everything. There was, like a 7-minute, piece, and it was just like horrible. and so rather than going, here are the nuts and bolts of composition.
Yeah.
Here's what orchestration is. This is the reason that these things work. So all of these composers that, you know, have made a gigantic name for themselves, Beethoven, blah blah blah, Tchaikovsky, they studied scores.
Yeah.
They looked at scores and they go, oh, that's why that's so cool.
Right.
But here we were given the scores that we were given to look over were like, they looked like blueprints. They were like, this does not look like anything of these scores. These are very 19th, 20th century kind of stuff. And so this is when especially German philosophy started to really get in and started to influence, you know, all of this music. And, you know, it was a reactionary thing because it was like during World War II, they were like, well, it's because humans are so emotional. That's the problem. And so they started to take away this emotional content.
Interesting.
And they just made it become like mathematic more than anything.
Okay.
And made music that's like basically impossible to play. So a lot of the players, there's a big divide between players and composers in music, and especially in the classical realm, because musicians work very, very hard to make things sound good.
Right.
When you put something in front of them that looks horrible, impossible to play, and it doesn't sound good, there's no benefit. There's no physical benefit of being like, yeah, I'm owning this.
Right.
And so again, like I said, they're teaching this aesthetic.
Okay.
You know, and what I wanted to understand was like I said, you know, these Tchaikovsky's, Beethoven's, and everything else. Like, this is what's really interesting to me, as well as big band music. And let's talk about that. How does that work? You know, how do you really, like, again, like the nuts and bolts of music? And I just was not getting the level of critique. I was, you know, you get like an A on your composition or whatever, and you know that you worked your ass off on it, and then it was, whatever, 3.5 minutes long. Here's somebody else, it's a minute long, and they're clearly not as many parts. We both get the same grade, and you know, it's like they can't even hum that. You can't hum that. Like, it would be different if you could be like, okay, I'm looking at this, I can sing all of these lines to you, even if they're totally weird, but they couldn't. And I had a professor go like, here, try this. It's this thing called mental drippings. You just start throwing some notes up on the staff.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, that's not teaching.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not teaching to me.
You're right.
Because it's like, you look at, you know, Quincy Jones went to this great Nadia Boulanger, famous professor, taught Philip Glass and, you know, all of these amazing composers that came out of the 19th century. And it was like, you saw and there's video online right now, YouTube, of like her teaching. And Quincy Jones has, like, in some of his, you know, things that I've read, this is what she told us to do. We were going to take this classical piece, we're going to reduce it to soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and put it on a grand staff, piano staff. And then you can really see that some of this stuff is like, they are layers of color. It's not necessarily that's the main melody, it's the main message of the piece. But here you go. This is exactly the most, you know, when you reduce it down to its essence, that's what it is. And then you can orchestrate it in a million different types of ways.
Right. And like we were talking about just a little bit earlier, that's what's so interesting to me right now is sitting down and seeing how people write different scores.
Yeah.
Just starting with the piano, just like bass, melody, lead, and then just the different orchestration, the different instruments they bring in, change it just completely.
So
change
much.
the feel. Yeah.
So much. And there's like weird ass shit that I love, like Debussy, like there's this piece he's got La Mer, it's like his only symphony. It's three movements. And there's things in there that, like, one of the frustrating things as well, like in theory, is they teach you to really think vertically, you know, like from bass to, you know, high, here's the chord. But the reality is, like, you know, you look at a piece like that, well, you can't analyze that just like, you know, oh, here it's a 4 chord going to a, you know, diminished whatever. It doesn't work like that. There's all of these layers that have nothing necessarily to do with the actual melody and the momentum of the piece, but it's all of this like color that's just kind of like there.
That's helping, and that helps shift the mood with the transitions.
Exactly.
The subconscious things that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah. Exactly. And so it's like those kinds of things where, you know, something that I've gotten really away from in like how I've been taught is that thinking vertical. You know, it's important because it's like, okay, if there's something jacked up. In my previous attempts in writing, I would find that, okay, I'm thinking very linear, which is very melodic, you know,
Right.
across. And so here's this line. All right, cool, that's good. And then here's this line. All right, well, they all sound good by themselves, but they don't sound good together. And that's when your vertical thinking needs to come in, you know,
Right.
and be like, something's got to go, or this has got to match up with this, what's most important. But as far as like really starting to think, okay, each of these sections, like the strings or horns, have to all be filling out the chord itself in a vertical fashion. That's bogus. And so you can just be like, all the strings, you guys are doing the exact same thing, octaves apart.
Right.
Because that's what is needed at that point.
Interesting.
It is. It's really cool.
So talk to me about this. So you
Yeah.
said you just stood in your house, your apartment, and just hit you one day and you're just like, I need to go back and learn this music theory. There was no one pushing you.
No.
So
It was,
what do you
boom.
think subconsciously was going on to make you make that decision? Because that's a big investment.
I know.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 23.
Okay. And so relatively young, but
Yeah.
not really when you're talking about
Exactly.
music.
Exactly. Especially composition in the classical
Right.
realm.
Right.
It was, I mean, because it's like, I've always liked film music, classical music. I've liked all kinds of music. But I think that one of the things with classical music, there is a classist type of, I don't know, image with it. You know, it's just
Right.
for rich folk.
That or people who think that they're really musically sophisticated,
Exactly.
so pop music and all that other
Totally.
stuff, not good.
Exactly.
Right.
Your nose is turned up.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so I felt, just thinking that, I was like, well, I mean, and the reality is, you know, if you want to be invested in classical music and you're a violinist, guess what? That violin's going to be like thousands of dollars. You're going to have insurance on that instrument.
Right.
So who can afford that?
Right.
Not somebody who grew up like I did,
Yeah.
you know? And so you just kind of feel not a part of it. Like you don't belong there, you know? So I think it just took a while for me for just the love of the music itself to just push me to be like, I don't care if I'm going to look like a fool. You know what I mean? And beyond that, there's a lot of frustrations where I had like a lot of ideas that I knew that I had to understand the language of music itself to be able to make real.
Right.
You know, and I had just come up across this. It was like, you know, I mean, and I laugh, but it's like at 23, I know we had the internet, but it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
You know?
Was it still dial up when you were 20?
Dude, yeah.
Yeah. And then someone picks up the phone.
Dude,
while you're-
I had Netgear.
yeah. Yeah, you get those
know?
AOL CDs in the
Yes,
mail. Okay.
exactly. So it was
Yeah.
just like all of this, you know, the resources just were not there, and I had no like, you know, I'm really the only musician in my family.
Okay.
You know, so I didn't have any mentors or anything growing up that would kind of show me the ropes in any possible way. I learned from ear, you know, when I started. So when that question hit me, it was at a time where I was going through all this frustration of just being like, how do I get, you know, I had even at one point, like even in high school, I didn't understand notation. I was afraid to ask people, so I was just making up my own. I was just like trying to scribble out graphs and things like that.
No kidding.
Because I was embarrassed. I was totally embarrassed to be like, to not know something. And, you know, you go up to somebody and you're like, I don't know what a quarter note is.
Right.
And they're obviously, you know, way better than you. It's like, there's just an intimidation factor, and especially being young.
Right.
And, you know, I definitely felt that.
All right, time for our very first music break. The track we're about to hear is called Fall, Winter, Spring, and Summer, and it is taken off the debut album by My Brothers and Sisters titled Violet Music Volume 1. Jamie is the primary songwriter in this band, and he also plays guitar and fronts it vocally. And man, this entire album is amazing. You're going to hear more from it later on in the episode, so here we go.
If you don't ask why in the situation, you'll be caught spinning round and around till you don't know how long you've been there. Who's to say what you'll do to get relief when you got no job and a hunger for family? You push a person so far they might rob a bank, but after all they've robbed us now, don't you think spending most of the time. Hear the gears as they grind down our lives. Fall, winter, spring, and summer. Who hurts the shepherd when he seems to have lost all of his good senses? What makes a battle between heaven and earth seem like such a good time? Do you think we dance in this distant trance forever, 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 forever?
Which we tend to is our mark. That which we tend to is our mark. That which we tend to is our mark.
Chapter 2.
So when you started playing punk rock, you were talking about earlier, so you were trying to write out staff music.
Yeah, when I was about senior in high school,
Really?
senior in high school, I was like starting to try to figure out how to write some of these ideas, because when I first started playing, I was writing.
Okay.
You know, it was like right away. And so I was creating melodies and
Right.
everything else on a piece of junk guitar that was my mom's in the 70s.
Okay.
You know? So yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out, I don't know tab, I know nothing. And I had no guitar teacher, so I was just like, how do I
Right.
how do I record anything to remember it, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
it was just like I said, like, I'm hearing these different parts while I'm playing something else. And so I know I can't play both of those at the same time.
Right.
So how do I figure this stuff out?
And so
know?
you started hearing like lead lines over your
Oh, immediately.
immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the thing. It was like I started out, rather than playing chords. The first chord was like a bar chord I got from like watching MTV.
Sure.
And I'd be like, pause. Like some tape thing, and be like, I see their hands.
Right,
They're
right,
doing
right.
something over here. All right, now suddenly I'm playing Iron Man. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a total
Yeah.
journey of like discovery, that is both very like physically and intellectually like a big moment, but really hilarious.
Dude, it's a huge moment when you figure out how to play a power chord when you're playing
know.
rock music. You're
I
like, oh my God,
know.
now I can play 90% of this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was just like, my God, I'm stumbling across all these different tunes. Smoke on the Water,
Yeah.
just on accident, But so my first thing was lead lines.
Okay.
Because I was just noodling around. I didn't know how to tune anything. I finally figured out that if you put these notes correspond on the piano, but I still didn't know I knew the guitar and some notes on the piano based upon having to tune it on playing these piano keys that corresponded, because
Nice.
I know, I was like, it's embarrassing how like ridiculous I was. I've told this story before, but the first time I tried to tune my guitar, or not tune, but string
it.
this electric piece of crap Squire 2 Fender Strat I got at a pawn shop.
Okay.
Totally against my mother's wishes, and I didn't know how to tune it or to string it, and so I took the entire thing apart, just about
The entire guitar.
the entire guitar, bridge, saddle, all of these things. I came to a guitar shop and I was like, I've screwed up clearly, and I have everything organized in baggies,
Right,
and
right.
I'm like, I need to string my guitar, and they're like, no. They felt so sorry for me, but it was that level of like, I don't know who to talk to about this. And
That's a good point that you make. Yeah, because back then,
nothing.
I had the same thing. My family, like my dad kind of played guitar.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't go through that extent of what you did
Right,
for
of
learning how to
course,
string
yeah.
it, but I went through something very similar where I was
Totally.
like, okay, where does this thinnest guitar,
Yeah.
string go. Just go on the tops, go on the bottom. Oh, I should have
Totally.
remembered before I took the guitar strings off to replace them.
Exactly. I know. And I think that like what's funny is I think a lot of people, especially non-trained musicians, have that experience, and also just the fact that like there is an embarrassing factor to being like such a fool.
Right.
You know, and being like, if I'm going to progress, I'm just going to have to be so comfortable being a moron.
Yeah.
To most people and asking all the stupid questions, because I did not get raised up in this environment where this lingo was being spoken at all.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I think a lot of us lose sight of that because now you can go on the internet for anything. And I totally forget to do that sometimes. My wife will ask me a question, I'll be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why don't you look it up? Oh, yeah. I could do that now.
Dude, I know. Exactly.
So, yeah, it's so much greater for me.
When I used to teach guitar, I had like 30 students for years, you know. Heavy teaching. It was just like I resented them, you know, and it got to a point where I was just like, guitar teaching is like going away. I was just like, I keep telling these kids, go on YouTube, you know, like I've done a million different things. Here's you have a camera phone. Go get, you know, check out my hands. I'm gonna break everything down to you.
Right.
And they wouldn't still, even with all the resources.
I think a lot of that, okay, so I'll give you my opinion. I want to hear your opinion on why you think that is. I mean, because there is that human element to it.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I try to learn stuff online, what frustrates me is that, okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get to it. Maybe they won't. Who will I ask? I could go on message boards. But, you know, I need to be in that learning mind space.
Yeah,
and that's what I want.
absolutely.
And to get that immediate feedback, like you were talking about earlier, that critique, that level of critique.
Exactly. Well, and I think that it's like, it's super important, but it's like, it's only going to benefit someone who wants that.
Right.
And the reality is most don't.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to something they're not very interested in.
Right.
Which I would say, like, most people, I mean, how many people have you that have played music and you've talked to, and they're like, oh, I wish I still played music.
There's a lot.
How many?
Yeah. There's a
so
lot.
many. But it's like, you don't have the interest or patience.
Right.
Huge. The patience.
Patience is huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you that immediate, you know, it's just not going to be like an immediate gratification, you know.
Right.
And so I think people who do excel in music and keep going, it's because like the little bit you learn is like so physically gratifying that you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a big deal, like, oh, power chords. You know, now that we look back on it in the grand scheme, that's nothing. But, you know, but to us, it was like a big aha moment. Yeah. You know? Yeah. But that's nothing. You know?
You're absolutely right on that front.
You know, and so I think that it's like it's that level of love of music that even the smallest, you know, incremental growth is like I say, physically it feels so big. Yeah. And has definitely still keeps me moving. That's the only way.
Yeah. And having the patience too. Dude. That is huge. That is huge.
It's so big because it's like, I mean, you're on the tech end too. So it's like, I mean, how many times where you're like, great, I have a new piece of equipment. I know that this is going to make my life easier and more creative. Except that now I have to integrate this son of a bitch with everything else I work with. And I have to go through that. So I can't even play with my new toy. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like,
that's right.
Great. Now I'm like on Tutorialville, USA, you know, and I have native instruments and Pro Tools on my speed dial.
Oh, they're tech support?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just like, call Pro Tools. I don't know what the hell's going on, you know? And
I think, you know, like one thing I always go back to, just talking about tech for a moment, is like a compressor. It is so basic. However, how many people actually really understand what a compressor does or how to really use it to its full capacity?
Not many.
Not many, man. I'm still trying to figure out. I've been using it for like 5 years.
Yeah. And there's no like, and I think like it's the cool thing, but also the difficult thing is there's no always do this.
Right. Yep.
There's no blueprint for how you go about a song necessarily, except there needs to be inputs and outputs.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
Everything else is like, how do you want this to feel?
Yeah, that was the most frustrating part when I first got into audio engineering was, okay, I go on these message boards. Okay, I need some direction. Everyone's like, well, it depends.
Exactly, dude.
Like, damn it.
Just tell me how to mic something or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you work with templates?
I do.
Hell yeah.
That was a big time save for me.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah. I had to set up all of my templates, and now I'm going through trying to set up my like orchestration templates, which are a lot different than setting up like a recording band or recording a hip hop artist template.
Yep. So I mean, when you're doing like the orchestral thing, like, are you working out of? I mean, you're working out of Ableton, right? And so you have like a template of like, okay, strings 1, strings 2, or just strings or whatever.
What I'm trying to do, I set it up like strings and then group all the strings together and then set them up in like the correct order. You know, the biggest thing I'm trying to figure out right now is what instrument can play up in what keys does it sound the best.
Exactly, yeah. I know that. I mean, it's totally weird. It's like I hear, you know, even just in, you know, Brahms is a great composer. I am always frustrated because everything he writes sounds really sludgy, and this is like a great composer, you know. And it's like that's how hard it is.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Here's someone who is Brahms. Yeah. And I've not that I've like, oh yeah, Brahms is great. He is, you know. But it's like there's something about whatever the order of his instruments. It's too dark. You know?
Yeah.
And so it's like you want a dark sound, and so you think, okay, everything low, you know, have this low thing, but you push so much like low mid and low bass, and it just sucks.
Saturates.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And so you're like, hike it up, buddy. You know, create some distance or something between your highs and lows, so it becomes, I don't know, empty feeling in a little bit of a spot, so it makes you feel sad. I don't you know what I mean? Whatever it is, but that's like, it's really hard. The orchestration is difficult.
It is extremely difficult.
I know.
And then, you know, knowing how to pan everything so that it sounds normal to a human being who doesn't know anything about that.
I know.
That's the one thing I just sat down and starting to try and learn more about that. I'm like, oh, so these strings really have to be panned this way, and then the brass has to be panned this way, and the drums have to sound, you know, far back, and then how much reverb do you have on each instrument?
Totally. Side chains.
Right.
I know.
It's a lot of fun.
It is.
It is a lot of fun.
and that's what it's like when you figure out side chaining.
Yes. Dude, I absolutely remember the day I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, I can drop my my bass down when I want my kick to come through.
I know.
Oh my God, this is how they really do
This
it?
is insane. I know. It's next level.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very, once you do it, like I remember, you know, like figuring out just an aux channel.
Sure. Yeah, that's
you
huge.
know? And
That's
you're
huge.
just like, oh my God. Like I've been putting like
Plugins.
an LA2A on like every single one of my CPUs, like frizzing out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, oh my God, this is insane. I know there's got to be a better way. I've heard about this thing, sends,
Right.
busing.
What is that?
You know, I think they're the same. Buzz, send, aux, right?
Dude, yes. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And there's just like there's the books out there like written by, I feel like, non-creatives,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so you'll go through all these whatever tutorials or anything else, and it's always a million pieces of information that you don't need.
Dude, yes. Absolutely. And that's what I struggle with music theory.
Yeah.
And I want to know, is that, you know, when you started taking classes, because I looked into JCC and I was like, okay, is there a theory class? I couldn't find one, so I was like, okay, I'll jump in this piano class. And it was like, okay,
totally.
Playing piano, I get that, but I want to learn the theory. And I couldn't find just something where it was just like, okay, I want to learn the theory that I need to know to be able to do this. I don't want to go into, you know, super, super deep yet, but I don't want to start off with just how to read a rhythm because, you know, at this point I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable with that. And so you kind of get into, okay, quarter note, half note. Okay, this is kind of boring. So I want to get into the good stuff. And then you're like, okay, now I'm too deep in. I don't know what a second inversion is. So where do I find that middle ground?
Totally.
How did you do that?
Well, I mean, I had, and I struggled with it. You know, I'm, you know, like I will say this, that learning music has completely changed me as a thinker. I've always been a very emotional person, and it feels like, you know, especially before I started studying music, that there are so many thoughts hitting me at the same time that I could not get one out. Just speaking, I just couldn't everything was just hitting me too hard.
Yeah.
You know? And so when I started studying music, and again, there was a moment that I was having thoughts that I had never had before. Like, not just like the concept, whatever the thought I was thinking, the way I was thinking about it.
The process?
Yes.
Okay.
I had never thought in like I said, it was like, you know, I keep saying a physical thing. I mean, I'm kind of on that type of, you know, more getting into the animal of being a human, you know, just on a spiritual level. But it's like, you know, you have like these aha moments or whatever.
Right.
Like, I can't explain that other than a physical feeling, because there's no real, like, how else do I explain that I just had one?
That's
And
true. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just something
It's
happens
intangible.
inside. It's
Yeah,
intangible,
right.
or whatever. But something changes within you, and so I was thinking about something, and I was able to suddenly like argue with myself in a completely different way, and you know, go through a different set of like logical instructions almost.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God. You know, and I knew it was like, there's no way that I was like this before. Once I started studying music and starting to think about ideas in these linear, vertical ways, it totally changed me. So I had struggled with theory because it was just being able to go through kind of like instructions, you know, one step and then go, okay, well, that works, and then here's this thing, and then that works. All right, here's that. It took me a while, and so I actually took Theory 1 twice.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
and then it was like, but again, it's like a light bulb clicked, and I was like, Theory's easy.
Okay. So there is a point where it gets easy.
Yeah, especially like, but I think that this is the thing, is a lot of people want to make studying music really mystical,
Yeah.
and it's not. It's really not. It's just that the way they explain it are coming from a very techie end in the first place, because they were brought up with it, so it's nothing to them. So when they talk about it, they talk about more advanced things
Right.
that are more interesting to them. And so rather than just being like, it's this easy.
That's a good point, because like you mentioned earlier, music is its own language.
It is.
And so once you figure out how verbs work, how nouns work, how to put a sentence.
I can put a sentence together.
That's right. And then once you get really good at putting sentences together, then you start writing short stories,
exactly.
novels, and that's where okay.
And that's the thing, is just like, so what's cool about it, you know, like we could do it now, and I could, you know, but it's probably not very interesting to a podcast or whatever for me to show you this. But it's like, I've done it with plenty of like kids, and they get it.
Now, okay, what do you think about this argument where people are saying, okay, well, kids, they can absorb things a lot easier than adults can? My personal opinion is, okay, I don't think that that's the case. I think what's going on here is that younger folks don't have as many things to worry about or cloud their brains
I
with.
agree.
So it's more open to absorbing and retaining, where we're going every day, okay, I got my job, I got this, I got, you know, a kid, I have my wife. And so it's
totally.
like you don't have enough free time or enough mental space to keep-
exactly.
okay.
I
Okay.
totally agree. I think that when children are experiencing things, they're really there.
Right.
They're very present
In the
and so
moment.
exactly. And so then, of course, that moment becomes a part of who they are.
Right.
And you know, when our heads are so jacked up, you know, with a million different thoughts, you know, especially like in adolescence, you know, it's like, of course, we can't think.
Right.
Because we're trying to like appease, you know, a million different types of people and all that. Who am I supposed to be?
Right.
And you're just like, bruh.
Yeah.
You know?
It just kills the creativity,
It does.
man. It does.
It does. My creativity was like murdered. You know, when it's funny. It's just like, it was great when I first started playing the guitar, but trying to form like this, you know, construct of like my social identity in my head, it started to deny all of these other things that I loved, like whatever, musicals and Disney tunes and all, you know, all of this stuff. And so it was just like, no, you know, you're like a heavy, deep, angry artist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I'm caking on like the type of accoutrement, you know, that goes along with that, because I'm trying to fit in to something, because I felt like such an outsider in life, you know, and going through that, it was like, I started to deny these, like, you know, again, very like visceral responses, that all kinds of things would give me, like Under the Sea,
Yeah.
Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
That's the jam.
That's a great song.
That's a great tune.
Dude, all the Disney films have
Dude,
amazing. We just went and saw The Life of Pets.
Yeah.
Last weekend.
Was it good?
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so they nailed that movie as far as like all the pet, like the different animal things that humans are used to seeing. They nailed those characters.
That's cool.
The storyline felt a little bit rushed.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, man. Like now that I'm getting into more composition,
Yeah.
all I do is pay attention
Yeah,
to the
I know.
music. And they had
Whatever.
music the entire time.
was awesome.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
Those guys, those teams at like Pixar,
Yeah.
and I mean those big teams they wow me.
That's yeah.
They really do. Like
They
you
do.
see, what's the movie? What is it?
Interstellar?
No, it's the movie where it's like in our
Inside
head.
Out?
Inside Out.
Yeah.
Those credits last
Yes.
like 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
You're like, what the hell is?
That's a good point.
That's insane. They're just like the guy. Here's a team of just guys who do noses.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You're like, my God.
Yeah.
This is unreal, the undertaking that these gigantic teams take on, It's like, okay, now the animation's done. Now someone's just doing like the motions of the mouth,
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's a tangent or whatever,
No,
but
dude,
it's like,
it
but
is amazing.
working all of that stuff, it's like, how the hell do they do? How the hell did they do this? But yeah, like but I mean, there was a point where it was like, and everybody goes through that. Oh, I'm not a kid anymore or whatever, and so I'm divorcing myself from liking those types of things, And so, really, when I started to study music, it was breaking down all of that stuff that I had built up, for years, and really just being like open to writing, to just be at least being able to rid myself of guilty pleasures, and being like, it's just pleasure,
Right.
Right. And then, okay, if it's pleasurable, like, let's learn how that works.
So when did you stop academically learning music?
2012.
2012. Okay. And at what point in your training, so you learned, and I'm not very good at music theory, so help me through here. So you
please.
probably learned what, major, minor scales, and then you learned the different modes. And then, so how far did you take it up to when you stopped?
To theory 4. Okay. So it was like, it was done, they were talking about secondary functions and all of this crazy, non-chords that are in diatonicism. Diatonicism relating to, so we have C major, so everything's related to C. So diatonic relating to the tonic, with the tonic being C.
Right.
And so whether that's major or minor, you have chords that stack up on there, per note, and in thirds, So once you get away from diatonicism, you think like, chordal scales, like, meaning, Q-U-A-R-T, chordal, where it's in fourths, rather than thirds.
Okay.
And then extended, sharp 11s. You can see that in jazz chords, just to be, I don't know, simple about it, So you have all of these things where it's like, it's a sus chord and everything else. And so rather than just going like in a classical diatonic way, it's like, oh yes, that's just a sus 4-3, and you're going from the suspended 4 to the third, which is the third is a note in the chord, and so going beyond all of that, it's this weird shit, that's
Sure.
cool. That's really, really cool.
Right.
And like, flat 2 is one of my favorite, which is they call it the Neapolitan chord. It's a bunch of
sounds
bullshit.
fancy.
Yeah, exactly. Jazz guys and everyone else goes flat 2,
Right.
And so it's just like, that makes sense. And then you're able to go, okay, cool. Now I'm not only able to go that if I want to make, a major, 7 or whatever chord, what's cool is I can also play an arpeggio of a minor 2 underneath that, because they have so many notes in relation.
Right.
And then you're able to, again, like hear that in your head, you know, here's this chord, but I'm actually playing this type of chord over that.
Right.
It's really, really neat.
Right.
And then you get all this exciting things that happen, you know, rather than just like, you know, block types of, you know, like bong, you know, it's
Right.
like, whoa, this is kind of shifting along and it's not where it's just this, you know, rhythmic, you know, thing where it's predictable. It's just, it's shifting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really cool.
That is absolutely cool.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's where you get to have like transitions that are like, whoa,
Yeah.
weird modulations and everything else that aren't like, you know, up a half step, you know, like up a half step, up a half step, you know, where it's like it just took you melodically throughout a whole transition and now you're in a different key and you
Yeah.
have no idea.
Right. No idea as in you're a listener.
Exactly.
Yep. It doesn't sound jarring.
Doesn't sound jarring, nothing.
You made it there and it's completely different emotion. And
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. All right, music break number 2. What we're going to do is switch it up here a little bit, and I'm going to play for you a song from the band It's Over, which was Jamie's previous band that he talked about a little bit earlier. The song we're going to hear is called She's a Killer, taken off the album That Girl. Jamie was the primary songwriter on this song, and he again fronted this band and played guitar in it. It's a really solid track, and I'm super jealous of this dude because this was before he went back and learned all that music theory. It just shows you how much talent he had from the get-go. So here we go.
Should she be without the man she holds so dear? Should she be without the hand that pulls her near? I confess I know the rest, it all is so clear. She's a killer, leaving love behind. She's a killer. I once knew a girl who learned to leave at every chance. Breaking hearts is what she knew of love and a man. Boy, I am just warning you, stay clear of that dance. She's a killer, leaving love behind. She's a killer. Oh, it's a shame that your name is the same as loneliness. Oh, it's a shame that your name is the same as loneliness. I was young without the sense to see it in her eyes. Bright and blue, she's after you. Better run, better hide. 'Cause the woman that will take the place of a thriller is a killer. She's a killer, leaving love behind. She's a killer. Oh, it's a shame that your name is the same as loneliness. Oh, it's a shame that your name is the same as
Chapter 3.
So now we're going to get into why I really wanted to talk
Oh,
to you
good.
outside of being a super cool guy and knowing a lot of, like you mentioned earlier when you came in, we know a lot of the
Yeah,
same people.
exactly.
I always hear about your name. Always wanted to meet you, so I'm really glad you came
me
in.
too, man. Absolutely.
So thank you. So what I want to know now, okay, this is the discussion I get into with a lot of my music buddies. Okay, I think we can all agree that knowing basic music theory is going to help you be a successful and good songwriter. And I think that we all can agree too that there are some really successful songwriters that don't know shit about music theory.
Totally.
They do it a lot by passion, they do it a lot by ear.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, in your opinion, what is the right amount of music theory to know for a songwriter? And I know that it's going to be, okay, this is going to be dependent on genre. So let's stick with like popular music.
Yeah.
Top 40, Billboard, that kind of stuff.
Well, okay, so let me just start out. So, My Girl.
Okay.
My Girl has an amazing transition. That shit is easy as pie, that song. Boom, dum, boom, dum, 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 boom, dum, 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 boom. Everyone knows that.
Right.
But you have that string section. So we're talking, here's this easy tune. Here's, where it's like basic chords, some major sevens and everything else. But that's pop,
Right.
And you go through the strings, and that whole string solo section takes you up a full step, and you have no idea. It's exactly what I talked about. And that could not be done without someone. So it's really difficult. There are some things in pop that are really intellectually like stimulating, hard, difficult things to do, but they sound so pretty that it doesn't sound like that.
Right.
Okay. And so I'm just putting it when you go like if pop in general. What I would say is this is like if it's always going to be dependent on like what you hear in your head. If what you hear in your head satisfies your immediate technique, then you're good to go.
But what about those things that you're not hearing in your head because you're not aware of them?
Well, that's the thing is like you can only be aware of those things if you like. I think for me, like I was, like I said, punk rock, Nirvana, that kind of whole thing. And so, of course, the technique to achieve that, pretty easy. All right. And so it wasn't until I started to kind of break down that type of ego that I had formed around myself that I started to even allow myself to listen to other things that could be influential. And once I did that, I was hearing new things in my head. And then I realized I don't have that technique,
Yeah. Getting out of your comfort zone.
Getting out of that comfort zone, exactly.
And that is extremely big. People were like, listen to the Beach Boys, listen to Peter Gabriel. And I was like, I don't want to listen to that. I want to listen to Deftones. I want to listen to, yeah.
Exactly. Rage. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Absolutely. And I'm not saying that like none of those techniques like within themselves aren't, they are less than. I'm just saying that some techniques are more easily achievable.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it.
So what about when you learn it? So if you learn it from day one, do you think that you're going to essentially constrain yourself? Let's say you learn it and you just get through basic music theory. Let's say music theory 101. Right. And you want to start writing. Yeah. Do you think that learning it right off the bat is going to limit your creativity?
No. I think it's just I don't think it's really a theory issue. I think it's a personal issue.
Okay.
I think that if you are, think of all the things that like people, I'm sure that you've had plenty of friends that are like, how do you keep making stuff, man? How do you keep just like, everyone has friends in the creative field that like they have a million projects that they really can't finish.
Right.
And how do you get to be the point? Well, what is the difference? It's not necessarily my theory makes me finish something.
Right.
It totally is dependent on, like, I have to finish this. I'm compelled, And I think that's what happens. So people limit their creativity. People, like, have, tons of people are their theory technical masters, can't write shit. Yeah,
that's true. It does swing both ways.
It totally does. So it's like, here's this person, like, and I know, how many people, like, I know who absolutely have the chops to write charts. They absolutely do. Hate it. Don't want to do it. Yeah. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
We have the same skill. Right. They don't want to do it.
Right.
And so is it my love? Has theory, or is it just my absolute love of music and my willingness to be uncomfortable learning something new? And and also putting myself into worlds that I didn't feel like I belonged, but I knew that they had something to offer. Right. Was it that was more inspiring? Well, I would assume so, rather than just learning theory.
That's true. Here's what I'm thinking though. Okay, so let's say I learned major scales. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write this song in the key of C. Well, now that I know theory, I'm not going to go to an F sharp because that's not in the scale. So I'm going to limit myself, right? So that's kind of...
Some people do.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like like that it doesn't happen, or like I said even before, like when I was talking about thinking vertically or whatever, how is that limiting? But I mean, I feel like you're always being limited by a certain lack of knowledge that you have.
Right.
You only have the knowledge that you have at the time that you're given, and then you're working on something, a project. So like obviously you're a way better writer now today than you were, when
I first started. Absolutely.
When you first started.
Right.
And it's because you have more knowledge now. And you can, like, when you hear something, you're like, okay, this is like obviously a high pass filter going on.
Right.
And before you're like,
how does that work?
Well, how does that work?
Yeah.
It was magic. And so, of course, you wouldn't think about going to an F sharp if you want to stick into that thing. But what I find more and more like interesting in my own head is that I try to be as moved as much as possible by melody rather than chords.
Okay.
So if the melody's pushing me towards a chord, well, then that's what I'm going to go to. But how many times are people limited by just the shapes that they know on a guitar? So they're strumming, and so it's like maybe they have that no theory, but they're absolutely limited by the shape. So of course they went to an F sharp. That's one of the shapes they know.
Okay, that's a good point.
You see what I'm saying?
That's a good point.
And so they'd only go to that chord just because they had a limited that. They're like, let's try this out.
Right.
Oh shit, that sounds really cool. And I absolutely have had the exact same experience, and realized that, like, just because I didn't know the theory wasn't saying that I wasn't doing cool secondary functions and all these different things.
Right.
It was just because I was listening to my brain go like, okay, I'm hearing this melody and I'm trying to fit a chord to go with that.
Right.
But
Right.
it was because I was listening to my brain. It wasn't just paying attention to some shapes that I can pull off, And so I feel like that is always like the thing is, once you get comfortable in your physical technique to be able to play an instrument, a lot of times you start to limit yourself anyways, based upon just what you can pull off immediately. And that it feels good to sound like and to play like you have command of an instrument.
Yep.
And so suddenly, but if your command is only so much, well, then you might just stick just in that command central where it makes you feel good until you're like, oh shit, like I want to do this crazy run and I have no idea how to do that.
Right.
Yeah. And so you either, you spend time doing that, or you go, that's just too hard.
That's true. That the one thing that I found theory was just makes you write a lot quicker. Again, once you have command of your instrument, once you kind of have that basic, okay, how do I string a song together and make it sound, interesting but not stereotypical?
Exactly.
And it was like, okay, instead of for me pecking around on notes, well, that doesn't fit. Why doesn't that fit? I don't know. I'm just going to keep, trying to peck around. Especially when I had to start bringing stuff together, entire songs, all instruments on my own. Yeah, that was the biggest thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because it's like it's exactly what we talked on the tech end. Think same thing on the knowledge end. Okay, now I have this equipment, but I'm still limited,
right?
In some way, because I have to figure it out. And like sometimes, like you have a ton of knowledge or whatever. Okay, how do I want this to go? And what I find now, I battle with myself, going like, oh, I could do this, and I'm thinking in a vertical chordal type of theory way or whatever. And then I have to stop. I have to stop that thought. I have to be like, no. The same way, like, same way in non-musical, but like with lyrics, like I'm not going to use that type of lyrical device ever again. So I have to tell myself, don't do that. Right. Right. You have to hear something else to be inspiring to like keep moving on before you're just like throwing down, here's another verse. And I, like I said, I just think that it's so dependent on the person, that obviously, two great songwriters, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, didn't know anything about theory or whatever, but they started to, really have command over what I feel is their minds to go, and the patience to struggle to match something, an instrument with what they were hearing in their head. And so they might not have known like that this whatever weird clawfoot looking thing, on their hands was, a diminished chord, but by God, that's what it, and that's the whole history of music in itself. It's not like we just got the information and it was all written down for us. It's
Right.
people struggling, going, okay, I feel like there's a bunch of patterns happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And okay, like let's talk about that. Yeah, I feel like there is patterns too. Like there's all, and it's weird. There's sound patterns and there's like beat patterns, and it's like okay, if we want to like talk about this further and like maybe show somebody something that we've been working on, maybe we need to figure out the note, you know,
You're right.
a written language to describe that. And it took hundreds of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's super cool because like you were mentioning earlier when you first started playing your instrument, you're
Yeah.
like, man, how do I record this? How do I remember this? And that kind of brought me back to, okay, that's how music started. It was all staff. People would say like, here's my song. I'm going to sell you my song. Here's the staff music. for it.
Totally.
And
It's crazy.
It's nuts.
It is
Yeah.
because it's just like, you know, like, and what I think it's cool now is it's, you know, when you're playing something, you know, looking at sheet music or whatever, what the gratifying thing as a player is that it's like this sound puzzle that's coming to life as you're playing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's
you know?
absolutely cool.
And it's really cool when you're a composer and you're able to have these amazing musicians come in and do a session and you're like, damn, this sounds awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and I wrote that, and then, you know, and every session I learn how to notate differently. Every single one.
When you say
know?
notate differently, what do you mean by that?
Well, like, there's certain things like thoughts, like when you're hearing, okay, here's this melody, but is that from this note to this note or whatever slurred, or is it attacked
Okay.
individually?
Okay.
You know, because if I didn't hear that in my head, you know, and then suddenly she plays something, I'm like, that's not right. It's something about it's not right. Well, I heard a slur when in that moment I was writing, but I didn't notate that because I didn't talk to myself and go, that's a slur.
Okay. I gotcha.
You know, it's like, it's a weird thing being able to go like, you know, not only here are these notes in these rhythms, but now they are attacked in these very specific ways. It's this loud. All of these types of articulation. She's going to go through this whole melody or whatever, but, you know, every single bar, it's going to be, you know, a crescendo and a decrescendo. It's you know, and that's all, you know, hairpins and all these different
Right.
symbols that mean exactly what you're hearing. And so every single time I go, it's like, okay, maybe I need to, you know, at first I went overboard on my accents when I was notating. So it was like anything that I was hearing, especially like horns, because I love like stabby, like da 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 ba da 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 da.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
Dude, yes.
And so when you have like a whole song that's like that level, you know, of sforzando, and it's these attacks, and it's, you know, it's you know, whatever, these dynamic markings, and then someone looks at it and it's just the same exact, like it's a staccato accent. That looks stupid.
Right.
So maybe you need to put one and put sim. Or just tell the player to blast it the whole damn way.
Yeah.
Blast it.
All right, time for another music break. The track we're about to hear is called You Should Have Known, taken off the debut album by My Brothers and Sisters, titled Violet Music Volume 1. The song's going to make you feel a little freaky. Here we go.
Never did it seem I'd fallen through your scheme. For what I've had to learn, you suck too quickly. If you think I believe what I'm hearing, that I'm buying your line, that the smoke in the morning to get out before the sun begins to rise. You better learn to watch yourself. You should have known. 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 Into the
the bed. It ain't no mystery, just ancient history. Falling back down to the same old routine. You should have known. You should know. You should have known. 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 No, no, no. You should have
Chapter 4. Chapter 4.
As a composer, so you'll go and you'll write the score, and then you'll bring it in, and then tell me how that process works.
Well, so I'll just use the latest example.
Okay.
Christine Grossman, she's the principal violist of the Kansas City Symphony, and John Eady, who plays cello in the symphony. I've been working with them for a long time, and so they come in a night, 2 nights, whatever before. I send them the PDF of the music, and they come, and my session is set up, and there's the notation in front of them, and they read it, and they are cold players. They're just like, it does not take many takes.
Yeah.
They're just that good.
So do you let them have the liberty? Okay, I'm going to send you guys this PDF. If you see anything that may, you think that you could make better once you run through it a couple times, feel free to give me your feedback. Or
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I not only do I do that, but also like in the session itself, if they're like, they think a note is wrong, or they are, or it's an articulation. Do you want that slurred, or not slurred, or whatever? I'll play it both ways.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, do it the slurred way. Or what do you think, or whatever. I definitely have those discussions, but at the same time, it's got to be an absolute like we're going.
Yeah.
Because one, they're really busy, and they cost. And so I can't be messing around too much. And secondly, like it's totally different. If it's per player, string players, brass players, orchestral type of players who play those instruments, their whole life is just like service the notes on the page. Do it the best you possibly can. They have a different mindset.
Gotcha.
So when you work with like percussion players, especially that are not, in the orchestral world, pop players, R&B players, and everything else, I'm not gonna I don't notate a lot of the different things. So I'll have like a chart, or like if it's guitar, I'm usually tracking it myself. With bass, what I do is I track, this is basically what I want. Here's some parts that are very specific, to learn. Drums, I will put, I'll just put a track together that they'll have a week to listen to. So here's a kick, snare, hi-hat, some crashes and everything else.
Right.
And then they come in, and then, if it just becomes, are you becoming too fill heavy,
Right,
or not?
right.
Okay, we bring it back. All right. But make sure you get this part on like these whatever, this cool hi-hat snare interplay during this. It's totally different with those players, But the orchestral players, they want to read. They're not creative,
Right.
very much.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not what
That's what they're trained to do. Yeah, you're right.
They are in love with like learning the technique. They just want to service. And so that's this thing is like they depend on composers. So I feel like there's this whole battle between like, especially like, our conceptions of producers and composers like are like these dictators. That's what I thought, at least. You know, one of the reasons I didn't want to, I was very like, you know, chip on my shoulder. I don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to be told what to learn, et cetera, et cetera. You know, when I first started, was just like, you know, you're, you know, harshing my mellow, man, like with your, you know, your off-key business. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And really, I was just like not ready at that point to put my ego in check. Later, when I'm sitting there and, you know, Doug Neat or whomever, the guitar teacher I had at the time, all they do is, no, do it again. You know?
Yeah.
And now I love that. I can just hear something that I've just played and just be like, that sucks. And I feel nothing anymore.
Right.
It's just
right.
like,
It's not
do it
about the
again.
ego. It's about the art. It's about
the art.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's just, so it's really cool to be able to like I say, is, you know, work in all of these different worlds, especially when you're going, you know, I have these classical players, you know, come in, but then there's like these jazz guys as well, R&B players, you know, that also come in. And so you're working like with different lingo. You know, the way I'm going to speak to someone who has, you know, no real formal education, but's a badass, I'm not going to like discount them and their musicality just because they don't speak my lingo. It's just that I learned their lingo first.
Right.
So it's easy for me to go, you know, you need to bash that, you know, snare or whatever, you know, whatever on beat 4 or something like that at the end of that chorus, you know, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Or I'll just beatbox to them.
Right.
Whatever gets the job done.
It's true. One of those
Whatever
like
gets the job done.
yeah, just ad-libbing it.
Exactly.
Whatever, yeah.
I'm like, here it is. You know, they're like whatever in booth or whatever, and I'm like on talkback, you know, and I'm, you know, whatever, just beatboxing the best I can if they haven't done it, and it works.
Yeah. That's absolutely, I think, is a big thing you just touched on, is being able to speak the exact same lingo and not feeling that, okay, now I have all this music theory. You don't know the relative minor to this key. Just bring in the next player.
No.
Like, just, being able to work with personalities, communication.
Absolutely. It's
Same
huge.
thing, yeah.
It's huge
because
it's like how many people, like I said, who know music, music theory or whatever, and like there's so many stories that they're like, but they're horrible people to work with.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that you can play like so many instruments or anything else. You're a dick.
Right.
And the way you communicate does not effectively like inspire people to put their best work forward.
And then you're gonna have a shitty session.
And then you'd have a shitty session.
Yep.
So
That's right.
enjoy that life. You know?
Yeah.
I don't, you know.
a very good point.
You know, seriously, it's just like, and being able to change up that language is like, I feel like a huge thing in being able to move music forward.
Yeah.
Because it's like what's going on now, I feel like again, we're, you know, this is not as far as theory goes, and talking to people, like when I quit my band and decided, okay, I need to really study, I need to like be, you know, like shut myself away and just learn, you know, I got a lot of grief, like, you know, like whatever, you know, like
a lot of
college
jealousy.
boy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or like I turned my back on a whole world of people and they're, you know, like we're not good enough or something.
Yeah.
And it's not that at all. It's just like, that's cool too. It's just that there's all this other cool stuff.
Right.
And I want to know that.
You're able to see deeper into it and
Yeah.
have more of a love than a surface love for it. And
Exactly.
not necessarily that everyone has that, but no, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of that stems out of jealousy. People are like,
yeah.
I want to do that too, but I don't think I have the patience or the time for
Yeah.
it. And so I'm going to, you know, be a dick to you instead of be
exactly.
supportive to you.
Absolutely.
And when you're younger, you know, that does come a lot easier, across a lot easier than when you're older. You're like, okay, yeah, I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it was difficult because it was just like, you know, like you develop like at that point like a certain tribe or whatever, you know, and you know, suddenly it's like you're playing with all these different people, you know, and there's like, well, what the, you know, what am I not good enough or whatever? And here's the saddest part: no, you can't play like this, you know, and that like I've lost. It's not like I haven't lost a gig. Like I lost a gig playing for a musical, and I was like super excited about Eating Raoul, which is like a crazy musical. If you check it out, it's really entertaining. But I really wanted that gig, and I didn't have the chops. And there was like in a recording, totally humiliating thing.
Yeah.
But that's the reality. Is it's like I'm not gonna go to the C student heart surgeon if I can get an A1.
It's true.
You know?
Yeah.
And so if you know what I'm saying? So it's just like that's my world. It's like just because I went to the conservatory just doesn't mean that everyone comes out of there as a badass musician. That is not the case. It's not the case at all that just because you went to music school, you're a great musician.
Right.
It's sadly, you'd think that. And I was like, oh, wow, you grew up playing the violin. You know all these theory classes. You're in the same classes as me. You must be really good because you're playing for the, conservatory symphony. No, you suck.
Technically, probably really good. But outside of that,
No, not even technically.
really?
That's what I'm saying. It's
Really?
like, dude, like the biggest difference between a symphony player and a non-symphony player, I'm talking like major Kansas City Symphony, whatever,
Okay.
is intonation and being able to cold read any damn thing. Not only are you fast as hell, but a lot of people can read and they're fast as hell, but they don't have the ear and they can't hear when they're out of tune.
Okay.
And so it's being able to like have like, in your mind, I'm sure that I know that I have this in my head more is like if there's a watcher inside of just tonality. It's like, whoa, that sounded out of tune. And they have the same thing.
So you're saying that these technical players come out of the conservatory, some of them don't even know when they're out of tune.
Yeah.
Is it because they're just focusing on sight reading, and so they're not paying attention to everything else that's going on?
Exactly. I think that's the problem is like, one of the great things I find about non-traditional learning, is that you are really focused on not the paper.
Yeah.
You're focused on sound. And so their whole life, they just looked at a piece of paper.
That's true.
And they're not really focusing on like, what does this sound like? What is the sonorous quality? If I play it like this, can I get like more low mid out of it? They're not even focused. A lot of players aren't even focused like playing guitar. If I can, I will always play any line like more further up the neck because I get more consistent tonality across.
Yep.
Like as far as dark tones, if I'm suddenly playing like an open string to something I've fretted,
Yeah.
it's a difference.
Night and day.
It is. And so it's like, you're talking, that is a thought based upon sound itself, not based upon notation. Because, I can, on a stringed instrument, XY axis, you can play that in a myriad of different ways. Well, which is the best?
But how much do they go into actual sound or theory when you're in like a music?
Well, they don't. That's the problem. That's
Yeah.
why one of the reasons I dropped out is like one, they're preaching a bunch of aesthetic, and philosophy, and not talking about nuts and bolts writing.
Yeah.
And secondly, if you want to be like a really, really great writer, that's what you need to be doing most of the time.
Right.
Is writing. If
Yep.
you want to be a really, really great violinist, you need to be playing more. You don't need to be taking necessarily, not saying that music history isn't fascinating. It's just like they split it up. Okay, now you're going to do music history. Here's the exact curriculum. Well, maybe that person is just such a badass musician that they just need to focus on playing music. And then while they're playing music, a teacher might go like, yeah, you got to check out this like composer in this time period, and then they read a book on that person, and they learn all kinds of different musical history things.
Yeah, because then they can relate to it.
Yeah, but they just want to put you through a program.
Okay.
Just like in school where it's just like everything is divorced. Language and mathematics is not combined. All of these different. It's everything's separate, and it's like it's really not.
Yeah.
And learning itself is an experience. And so maybe that if people would, at least know more depth to whatever that they need so they can bring, that their expertise to whatever, environment they're in, more readily and more like sounding experience, because they have like a really deep feel, they have this scope to really be able to like inspire someone else on that level. But right now it's just like, okay, you're supposed to be playing violin, whatever, 3-4 hours a day, if you're a player. And balance that with all these other classes or whatever that have nothing to do with playing your violin. So obviously most of the people who are getting, symphony jobs, that's where they put their time in.
Right.
They sacrificed whatever, their history classes
Yeah.
and whatever else they needed to play more.
That is an interesting. Okay.
Because like I said, like I've been in sessions where I was like, here's somebody who is in the UMKC symphony or whatever orchestra, and I'm just like taking that at face value. They're good. And then I listen to them on track and playing my music, and I'm going, oh shit.
Right.
This is horrible.
Man, yeah. That's got to be a big bummer when you're like, okay, that's your background? Sure, yeah, go ahead and play this. And you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you work with those people?
I've had like encouragement, Julian Goff, who plays drums in My Brothers and Sisters.
Yeah.
He encouraged me quite a bit. He was just like, get symphony players. And again, I was like struggling with like, oh my God, they're going to look at me like I'm an idiot.
Yes.
Right?
How do you get over that?
I just did. I just had to.
Just went and did it and failed fast and then just made yourself better every session.
I mean, yeah, like when I first started working with them, it was, it was, like I said, really intimidating, and then there are certain things that like in my writing, like I not patting myself on the back, but there's some rhythms that I write that are badass syncopated rhythms that are hard for them.
So you get like a little bit of victory in there.
Hell yeah, because you're like, it's like this, and you sing it to them, whatever that line is, and you're like, son of a bitch. I'm not only hearing that, but I'm writing it correctly.
Right.
And so there's those cool things. And then also, like, it becomes like a learning experience for me, because they're going to tell me something, maybe it needs to be notated differently or whatever, or at the very least, there's some type of expertise that they give to me as far as like just, bowing techniques or whatever. I'm like, it's just sounding like, I don't know, too shrill or whatever. And they're like, well, maybe if I put the mute on, clink, and oh shit, it sounds way better.
Yeah.
There it is. And now I know.
Right.
Now I know if I want that sound, I need to, get that mute. And so it really is. It's intimidating, and then suddenly it's just like, no, I have a skill set. They have a skill set, and we need each other,
right?
Because they don't get a gig without new music, and music doesn't go forward without composers and technicians working together.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Right.
Whether it's an engineer or anything else. It's all these synth developers. You know what I mean?
It's true. It's a big team.
Exactly. And so I think that's the thing, is being able to go like, I'm bringing in an expertise and I need to depend on somebody else that they're bringing theirs, So like I said, working with those symphony players and like, especially like older musicians, who are like seasoned.
Right.
And you're running some session or whatever, and they're like harassing you. It's like, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
What do you mean by this?
Yeah.
And you're having to, like, I think that one of the greatest things, like in a session, I feel like for anybody, if they're willing to like lay themselves on the line and like sing the thing in the exact way. So, you don't want to go like, if your horn line is da 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 ba 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 da 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 da. If you want that's your horn line, and you go ba da ba 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 da 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 da, that's bullshit.
Right.
You need to go da da. You need to bring the intensity that you expect from them, and then when they see this person is clearly invested in that, enough to look like a maniac for a second, and they did it accurately. Well, then now I got up my game.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is.
It's really, really cool just to see. I don't know, like I said, like, that like I said, I was really uncomfortable at first in those sessions, and even calling them up and trying to, like, I'm super nervous, even just thinking about how I used to be, But now it's just like, I know that I'm gonna look foolish, and they're gonna look foolish. That's it.
That's crazy, man. That is crazy. I've always, because, man, every time I see composers, before I knew anything about composition, I'm like, oh, it's just some dude kind of standing up there keeping time. And then I'm like, okay. So I started digging a little bit more. I'm like, wow, these are freaking musical geniuses. Yeah. And very good. To me, it's like a really good producer. Yeah. If I could put it like absolutely. In, the right terms. And producer in a sense, not a producer who makes beats. I think that term is incorrectly used a lot. Me too. But a producer being able to bring in influences and, well, something needs to go here and we'll do that a little bit differently. Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and and it just takes time. I mean, like for me, I feel like the biggest hurdle was time. Yeah. It was like, okay, I'm 23, just starting to learn to play, to learn how to read music, to do this. And the only way that I'm going to be able to, really be able to do what I want to do is if I just do it constantly and I'm not doing anything else, And so it was just, my average is like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. That's all I do is
still.
Yes. It's been that way since I was 18.
Oh, wow.
But just on different facets. And so it's just play, write constantly, work on programs, because it's like, that's the thing, right? It's like, learning a DAW and all of this. How frustrating is that? How many hours of tutorials, have you, watched?
Right.
So many.
Right.
Without even the right answer.
Yeah. It's true.
And now it just becomes like something that I'm just like, I get up in the morning and put on a tutorial. I don't even know what the hell I'm listening to. I'm just like, it's this thing. I'm sure just as long as it's filtering through my conscience, maybe I'll click the right button, and it's because of that stupid thing, or whatever. But that's exactly like what it's like, is going, okay, I need to write. But obviously, like, the way the whole industry is moving is like, it's moving away from big studios. Yeah. It's moving into internal studios. And that's the thing, is can you be mobile and create high quality, competitive, sounds with larger, studios, and you know what I mean, with like big commercial, people. Can you do that? Well, you can, but you have to know how to use this shit. Yeah. And it's so hard. And so it's like, now it's like, it's a cool thing, like I have a Native Machine Studio, and that thing is a beast. I love that piece of equipment. And it's also cool creatively, because it's like, working with pad mode, it's like, now I'm like playing things in a rhythmic way that I might not have done if it was on a keyboard. Right. So just using that interface where it's not just like, oh yeah, there's the scale or whatever.
It's a different tool.
Yeah, it's a totally different tool. Now I'm getting different sounds, but I have to understand that, very quickly, that it's like, well, this is how it's set up. Here's the octave, etc. And that just takes a ton of time working on it. Yeah, that's it.
I thought I'd go ahead and keep with the freaking mood and play another song off the My Brothers and Sisters debut album, Violet Music Volume 1. This track is called How to Move, What to Wear. Oh man, it is just so smooth. You guys are going to be digging it. Here we go.
You think you come before heaven and hell, the land and the sky, and you water and air. I tried to understand for too long, but now that I'm gone, blind is not what you are. No, I don't mean to suggest your eyes may see clear and fine, but your heart could never pass the test. How to move and what to wear, there is no way, 'cause you keep telling me what to say when to turn out the light. Baby, nothing, 'cause I got a horse in which to fight. Dawn has come and now I'll navigate. This time I found no need to hesitate. Just look around and you may find my back, and soon another to see through your lies. clouds and washes away the belief that I found the sun for all of my days. My heart has been worked right to the bone, so I just leave it alone. What will your mouth think of next? What else have you got? I turn myself into a battleship. Go on and take your next shot. How to move and what to wear, there is no way. Cause you keep telling me what to say when to turn out the lights. Baby, nothing, cause I got no voice in which to fight. Don't ask, come, and now I navigate. This time I found no need to hesitate. Just look around and you may find my back into another to see through your lies. There ain't no use. I've heard your excuse, and now I'm leaving. Come morning, come evening, come afternoon, you got your thumb on me. Come morning, come evening, come afternoon, you got your thumb on me. Come morning, come evening, come afternoon, you got your thumb on me. Come morning, come evening, come afternoon, you got your thumb on me.
Chapter 5. Chapter 5.
So when you were playing in your older band,
Yeah.
it's over, and then you made the decision to, okay, I'm gonna learn music theory. I'm assuming, and correct me here if I'm wrong, that when you were in that band, you're probably like, okay, you had the dream in mind, like we all do when we start playing in
Yeah.
younger bands. Okay, I'm going to probably get a single on the radio, and then we're gonna go out and tour, and then we're gonna get a record deal, and then I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And so you made that decision at 23 to go back and spend a lot of that time, and then at that point in time as well, how did you deal with, okay, I need to give away for a moment these dreams of touring? I got a little bit of momentum with this band. That's got to be extremely hard. And,
It's hard.
how do I balance all this new things I need to do with my job? How am I going to succeed in this industry?
Dude, yeah, it was a really difficult situation, especially because it was like first, student loan hellhole.
Yep.
All right. B, I wasn't able to apply for the first 2 years for Pell Grants, and so because I was making like $150 more,
Right.
working in a warehouse and doing chandelier cleaning on the side,
Right.
and touring with this group, doing the whole Weekend Warrior deal,
Yep.
and trying to do all these practices. So it was a really big decision, but it was like the most I can't. It's so weird. It's just like it's absolutely because of a love for music. I mean, that's the only reason, that I did that. So it was hard in the fact that I was like, I know I'm going to be disappointing people. And even when I was in the mode of like, okay, I mean, it's over, I was still studying, like, because I was it was 20. I started going back to school at 23, but I was still playing with It's Over. At the time for the first like 2 years. So it was 25 when I finally entered into the conservatory, 25, 26. And, I'm studying on the road tonal harmony, with the dome light on with like some rollout keyboard,
Right. Yeah.
like that was my, that's my after show. Before show thing is like working out of these workbooks.
Yeah.
Super, like, it was funny because you would be in these like these total shithole green rooms,
Yep.
and everyone's getting totally wasted.
Partying, doing whatever.
And
you're
yeah,
behind
I'm
the
like,
corner.
I got a workbook, out here studying tonal harmony. I was like, this is so weird, But it was like, it really was just that final push of just like, I know I have to just make that leap that Because right now it's like, and I had a warehouse gig that the reason I had it what for the longest time was I hit a guitar in this warehouse and it was like I could get away and play most of the time.
Nice.
And not work.
Yeah,
know?
Yeah.
It was a total, it was like it was
the perfect job.
It was the
like.
perfect job. But you're like, I'm going to school, I'm working, I'm doing this thing, I'm having no time to, do the work that I came here to learn and to really let it soak in. And so when making that transition to finally, like I say, calling it quits, it was also like it was not just letting the dream go by for a moment or anything else. It was just shifting. Yeah. It was just like it became less about like an end result of like record label, big tour fame, and more about just like learning more.
Yeah.
Doing
it for the art instead of for the paycheck.
There's or lifestyle or anything else. It was just like, now it's, I see more genuine sense of myself just because it's just like, I like learning. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's just really fun to have a new tool, to play with and like being able to communicate like with somebody like yourself and we can laugh about oscillators. It's like, that's a cool thing that I can connect with like such a widespread, like all these different worlds, of music, quite easily just because I've been involved in so many of them. And I would not have if I didn't learn about them. Yeah. And understand like that this is like all these crazy Latin rhythms and everything else. Well, they have these names, you know what I mean? And so it sounds Latin, and you're like, but you know what I mean? It's stupid because it's very specific. Yeah. It's a samba, it's a whatever, Mozambique, you know what I mean? Like whatever. And that's interesting to be able to talk to somebody and compliment someone very specifically and be like, oh my God, that samba groove or whatever was badass. Yeah. Like you're totally on top of that. And they know that and you're instantly connected because you appreciate a high level of skill that they've worked hard for. And so like I said, it's just a totally different process now where it's like creatively I'm like, I don't really care what lands, you know what I mean? Like, I'm song shopping now a ton. And it's like to all these other artists. And for the longest time I was, my ego is way too involved and I was like, I'm not going to, it's my song. It's like, no one's going to be able to deliver it like the way I do. All this kind of craziness. Yeah. And now I'm just like, I just don't care because when I know that all of these greats that I love are better now because they're older and they've been doing it longer. Yeah. So
they put in the work.
They put in the work and they keep working at it. And so that's exactly what happens.
Plus too, when you're more focused in on the art, then instead of the money at that point, then it's like when you're shopping around songs, if that person can do it better than you can, by all means, make that happen because it's getting that passion, it's getting that identity across that you want that song to convey.
Absolutely. And I mean, and that's what's, it's nice to be able to contribute to a larger picture. Right. Like I said, people who are just doing noses on Pixar films or whatever, I feel like they've got to think the same thing. Sometimes it's, arduous, it's like it's a pain in the ass sometimes, but the reality is like, that's the thing. It takes a gigantic team to really make things like shine. Yeah. And I mean, one of the reasons, on the back of this record that there's all these people, it's like I wanted to make sure that we're so obsessed with the final product, the face of the product, that we don't, and I think that we are seduced by it. And so having the, touring, getting the label, all of these things, it was like a seduction, that had nothing really to do with the music itself. It all had to do with like a sense of belonging, you know, etc. that I bought into, you know. And the reality is the real sense of belonging is being able to contribute, you know, to a project, you know, that more people are, you know, involved in, and that, like, you know, like you're making someone's dream come true. You have the skills to be able to, you know, like I say, really contribute to the larger spectrum of making music or making art.
Right.
You know, that's where, like, that sense of belonging that is way more genuine than just like, okay, I got to fit into this, you know, I better be successful by the time I'm like 29 or whatever, or else I'm too old, I'm not as sexy, no one wants to hear about like my kid, and, you know, my, you know, that really, you know, on a day off, what do I want to do? I don't want to go sniff cocaine off the hookers' asses. I just want to, like, hang out with my kid, you know, and go to the park, you know, and I feel like those things subconsciously are constantly going on, because the reality of pop music, it's about, you know, youth finding love, you know.
Wait, so you're saying you don't want to sniff cocaine off?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, maybe it would be way better than I'd imagine, you know. But
you're right.
I'm sure it's just going to be sweaty cocaine and just be clumpy at that point. You know,
a little bit of glitter in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's probably not the best cocaine, you know. So, you know, I'd rather just go fishing, you know.
Yeah.
But really it is. It's just, it's very much about that. But behind the scenes, all the amazing tech guys, all the amazing musicians that make that machine run are old.
Yep.
You know, what's Pensado? I'm sure Dave Pensado.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Dave Pensado. Is he a hot, you know, stud? No.
Yeah.
The dude is a genius mixer and a hell of a guy, right? And so that's really what makes the machine run.
That's true.
It's not like your Britney Spears, or it's not like these bands or anything else. All these guys behind the scenes that are,
that's just the aesthetic. The Britney Spears.
That's
is
what
the
I'm
aesthetic.
saying. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like what sells. It's the package. It's the, you know what I'm saying? It's just the wrapper.
Right. Interesting.
It is, because it's like, you know, and I feel people are like, Britney Spears. I'm like, have you listened to Toxic? That shit is the jam.
Yeah.
Toxic is an amazing song.
Yeah.
And you think Britney Spears wrote that?
Right.
You just don't like her. She doesn't fit into your whole social spectrum of who you identify yourself as.
Right.
But the reality is, you listen to that and you're not moved by those sounds.
It's a badass track.
It's a badass track.
Yeah. That's no, you're absolutely spot on with that.
You know,
you're absolutely spot on.
And
with
it's
that.
just like what's the name? The RZA. Dude, that
guy's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That guy's amazing. And so you're like, and I've read interviews with him. It's like, all I do is read manuals. That is not going to be on the cover of Spin.
That's right.
The RZA. What manuals are you reading? You know, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
They don't want to know. They don't, in most interviews, they're not going to ask the technical questions. They're not going to ask all of that kind of stuff, because it's not, you know, like the whatever drama, you know, that people talk about.
Yeah.
But it's really like what makes the art.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
And but all these gigantic publications, like I said, it's just like they're not going to talk about this. This is not what the general public is going to be interested in, whether you use Cubase or Logic, you know?
Right. What Waves audio plugin did you use on that guitar?
Exactly. They don't care. But I wish they would, because it's like, if we had a more informed public, I think that they'd be like more inspired to at least, you know.
So do you think that is why music has become, in the grand scheme of things, to the mass population, so consumable to them, because they don't understand? They only see the surface of it.
The mystique.
Right. They don't see, and what you're talking about, look at the credits of a fantastic record. You're going to have a shit ton of songwriters, top liners, producers on that.
Exactly.
I feel like now that I can just go on SoundCloud and listen to something, I don't have to like look in the manuals or look in the booklets.
Exactly.
You know, look at all the credits. That I feel like that's why people are just, oh, well, in 20 seconds, I don't care. That song's terrible.
Exactly.
You know, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that an uninformed public is not as strong as an informed one for sure. I think that that it's more like whatever. I feel like I don't know. It's really strange. Most like interviews and everything else that where they are talking to someone, they're absolutely not asking the technical questions. I think they think that it's boring, right? Obviously, they think people want to hear, but really, I feel most people just want to hear things that like sound, like that are full of vitality. That's really in drama. If you're sparking that, like obviously right now we're having a very energetic, awesome conversation, and anyone who'd listen in would be like, "This sounds like interesting," because these people are emoting,
Okay.
and they think
I'm
that
on
the
page with you now.
technicality
Right.
equals not emotive.
Right.
And so, but it actually obviously does, because to think like, oh my God, like how the hell are we going to make this thing? And they go from that, it's a lot of emotions, a lot of trial. Talking about it is very interesting, and would definitely inspire people, but we're totally cut off. We're absolutely, I mean, just the fact that like, how, like, your grandma, like I know my grandma, most people from that generation they learned how to play the piano a little bit.
Right.
They learned how to read music. There was educational systems that were also not just, in the school. There was like the church that would teach whatever, piano skills and everything else, and wanted to bring people into that conversation. And now it just seems really exclusive.
Right.
It feels like a really exclusive club to be like artsy. You know what I mean? Where you like have to have all of this other stuff, but really what it comes down to, is did you learn those techniques? And so I think that, I'm sure I'm going off or whatever on something else, but at the same time, I feel like with people, generally, they want to obviously be inspired. I think anytime anyone's talking passionately about anything, that's absolutely why Trump is where he is.
Yeah.
There's nothing factual he really states. There's nothing. It's just emotion, And someone like Noam Chomsky, who is definitely a very, like, there's heavy emotions within that, but the way he speaks is very learned. It suddenly puts people off because they think that, oh, this is heady or whatever.
Yeah.
And but also there's a whole, a culture of like, if you are, like I said, like I got grief for wanting to further my skills. That's craziness. People should definitely want everyone to further their skills.
Yeah. Never stop learning.
Never stop learning. But suddenly it's like the more you are looked at as if you are into a different club, And I would say that most people in general, because they don't have a high level of technical expertise, that takes a long time and a lot of patience, a lot of work to gain, and feel like how I did was like in the beginning, well, that's not me, That's not me, that really smart stuff.
Right.
I'm more whatever, renegade, artsy or whatever. And I would never, want to be sitting in a symphony and blah, blah, blah. This isn't me. And I feel like that's what's going on, is that we're so divided, by tribe that that people can't even appreciate that, hey, there's like, in this whatever R&B, jazz world, that music has a lot of power. So does this music. They all have all these different techniques. And if you're a master at one technique, whether it's like fiddle playing in a bluegrass band or whatever, if you've reached like this crazy level, you're going to be able to listen to R&B and be like, damn.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think that when you talked about our grandparents having been exposed, or even being like, you have to learn an instrument, and now music's getting taken out of school programs.
Absolutely.
And You're absolutely
it's
right. with that.
frustrating.
It is.
It's really frustrating because what goes on is like you see like again, all of these things like are combined, the whole political atmosphere, you know, like social demographics, they're all combined. And so, and you see like what ends up being like like obviously, you know, we want almost this crazy wrestling match as a culture to decide the candidacy, you know, of our president or whatever, which is a figurehead. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not like we're a society being like, why don't we just put like the best scientists and social engineers and people who really have a passion for these things? Why are we getting a bunch of lawyers?
Yeah.
You know, and not just lawyers, but WWF type of lawyers who are like willing to like go off the ropes, you know, verbally, you know, and put on this whole facade, like, because that's what I think we think sells, you know. It's not just
what
passion.
we think sells is also what we're so used to.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It becomes the norm.
Right.
And then you're not even able to separate like what you want. It's like for, you know, like I was raised off of fast food, right? When I was young, fast food all the time. All right. And it was like if I, you know, like I remember thinking that I was so metropolitan when I was like in freshman year, like the summer after freshman year, that I had a Euro sandwich for the first time.
Culture.
That's what I'm saying. That's insanity.
Yeah.
You know, that it was always there. Jerusalem Cafe was always there my whole entire life, but I'd never even considered like, what's that taste like? Ever.
Yeah.
Until someone was like, hey, let's go eat here. And I was like, oh, what is this? This is weird. You know? And then I was like, oh my God, I like it.
Yeah.
And it just so happens I like food.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I'm not like going to think of myself as, oh, I only eat this type of food.
Yeah.
You know? But most of the time it's like people go by, there's stations all over the place, all kinds of different music, there's all kinds of different access out there. They just constantly access the same.
Yeah. The familiarity.
Over and over again. And they have they don't have anyone in their life that's clearly like, why don't you check this out?
Right. To expose them.
Because they're totally isolated. Like, you know, rural communities, urban communities, everyone's so isolated within their own social sphere, you know, separated by class and race and all these different things, that you're just going to get the same. Everyone is in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, and so my normal, what I was growing up, is completely different from me normal now, because I was fortunate enough to have people, you know, expose me to different things. You know, and I was like, oh shit, you know, like, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the big benefit that I had growing up in a military family, was that we moved everywhere every 3 years.
Yep.
And so being able to see, you know, we lived in Singapore for 2 years. And when we came back, we moved from Singapore to Alaska. Imagine that.
Wow.
Yeah. Equator to the fucking almost North Pole.
Damn.
I had to get used to that.
That's insane.
It was funny because the first summer we were in Juneau is where we stayed. We lived for 3 years after that. It was like a heat wave. And it was 50 degrees. People were in shorts. We were in parkas and like 3 pairs of pants because we were freezing. But then within like a year, the next year,
acclimated.
You got acclimated to it. But
totally.
Yeah.
But didn't you like, you moved around, didn't you always feel like an outsider?
Always.
Me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My whole life. Still, I can be like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like I'm pretty much, you know, alone in my own head here or whatever. Like, you know, this is how it is.
Right.
And I'm just comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm just so comfortable with it now that it's just like, this is normal, you know, for me to be like that. But I feel like it takes outsiders to be able to look at these different pieces of the social, you know, puzzle, the artistic puzzle, all of these different things, to be like, oh shit, you know, like, you know, there's an initial feeling of I want to be on the inside, but once I'm on the inside, that's all I get to see.
Right.
Is that one view. You know what I mean? And I feel like it always takes outsiders to be like, isn't that interesting that these things operate in this way? And someone on the inside, the whole saying, you can't see the forest for the trees, you know, that whole thing. Well, yeah, it's always going to take outsiders like us to be able to be like, you know, yeah, we'll check out these different instances, you know, that no one else is going to look at because they're on the inside.
Right.
And it's not like they don't even know they're on the inside.
Right, exactly. Like a fish that doesn't, you know, all it knows is the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's no other perspective,
Right.
And so they're just like, this is life.
Yeah.
You're like, well, this is your life,
Right.
This isn't life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like, you know, we're hugely disadvantaged, you know, culturally speaking, like, and from gaining more knowledge, you know, even though we have the internet and everything else, because the system is just like, you just keep clicking what you already like.
Right.
And
Exactly.
nothing new.
Exactly. Yep. And that's how all the social media works.
Totally.
Yep.
Exactly. When you see like, oh, this, you know, here's your group of friends, you like these different things.
Yeah.
Suddenly Facebook knows your algorithm. They know what you're going to like.
Facebook, Amazon,
Yeah,
all, the time
all of
together.
it. Here you
Yeah.
go.
Exactly.
Here's something you're going to like, your
Right.
demographic.
Yeah, that's a real good point. I never thought about it like that. That you know, the internet is a beautiful thing in the fact that now we can all have access to the same information, but being able to tap into that access
Yeah.
is a complete different thing. And it's so frustrating to me because music is such a universal language, right?
know.
Even if you and I are different culture, we speak a different
Totally.
language, music is something that we can all have in common.
Yeah.
And it's so disappointing to me that like we are taking it out of schools and we're taking it out of
Me
like
too.
just daily life because it is such a passionate and it is such a relating art form that I think is just so important, just even in day-to-day life.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, like you'll watch a movie and all you listen to is the soundtrack. And it's like, there's an absolute reason why they had like the whole talkies
Right.
phenomena.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, it's pretty important. It's why you could just be like, Trident gum, eat Trident. You know, it's minty. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But no, they're going to be like, let's layer this sucker with all kinds of crazy music.
Right.
You know, because it's like it makes us feel.
Right. It does. Subconsciously or consciously, it's there for a reason.
It's amazing where it's just like, you know, obviously in the hands of good, you know, like, you know, but suddenly you're like, Doritos. And
Right.
you're like, this hurts my mouth, but I keep eating it, you know?
Right.
But, you know, it's just go that damn jingle, you know, like how long have you been in Kansas City?
12 years.
12 years, okay. Do you ever remember the CarX commercial? I don't even still rattle, thunderclap, or don't worry, call the CarX man.
I don't.
Dude.
But the general,
Yes.
yeah, the car insurance has a kind of
Exactly.
the same thing, or Pizza Street,
That's what I'm saying.
the Pizza Street jingle.
That's what I'm saying. So it's just like it's weird that you're like it's so like absolutely necessary in marketing, like a good jingle
Right.
or something that like hooks you, because suddenly you're like, I've never thought about like, oh, my muffler went out or whatever. And the only thing I can recall, even though I've passed a million different auto places that say we do mufflers
Right.
on it, is CarX. See, so what am I gonna call? Oh yeah,
Right.
CarX. Big
Exactly. And if they work their phone number to that jingle,
son
even
of a
easier.
bitch.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's how fucking amazing and powerful it is, that it's like it becomes a deciding, you know, a tool that you decide your life
That's true.
based upon.
Yeah.
You know, these decisions, you know, like, oh, what kind of insurance do I want or whatever, you know. It's insane.
All right, friends, this is the last music break of the interview. This track, again, is taken off the My Brothers and Sisters debut album, Violet Music Volume 1. This song is called Watch Out, and it is my favorite song on this album. I saved the best for last. Boom.
There is another sense of time that follows a simple state of mind. And if you try it, don't be quiet, testify, though they will not like it. So watch out if it's ever been the case that you come to question that
Chapter 6.
I think one thing that everyone should do is they should watch a clip of a movie with no music behind
Oh,
it.
dude, without a doubt.
Yes.
It's frightening.
It's frightening.
It's frightening.
It's frightening, and then go on YouTube, find that same clip, and then have someone show you what it would feel like and look like if there was jazz behind it,
Yeah.
if there was an orchestra behind it, if there was rock music, and it will blow your fucking mind.
I know it blows, dude. It changes everything.
Yes.
It changes everything. This is hilarious. This is an absolutely like guilty pleasure, and my wife got me into the show a long time ago. But The Bachelor and The Bachelorette,
Okay.
those the crew that they have doing music on that, phenomenal. They're like super geniuses.
Yeah.
It's not like this recycled. It's all new stuff all the time that they're pulling out, and they're like, mixed with the editing or whatever, are absolutely capitalizing on every emotion, every single thing. Riding stuff out. Oh, it started out sad, and now these strings are building, and it's this
Right.
glorious moment.
Right.
And you're like, yeah. And how did that person goes? All right, they get their edit, and they go, yeah, all right. This last 40 seconds is edit. So I have to grow something from depressing to
Right.
ecstasy in
Right.
40 seconds.
Yeah. It's nuts.
And that's one piece of music,
Right.
for an hour-long show. Because no one gets that.
Right.
No one gets that at all.
You're
Like,
absolutely right.
How
Yeah.
it is everywhere. It's just what you said. It's like it's all pervasive everywhere you go, all the time. You cannot get rid of it.
Right.
It's I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, it's obviously like what has controlled my entire life. You know what I mean? Is being able to harness some of that power. Hopefully for good, obviously.
Right.
Or whatever. But I don't know. It's tough out there with the like obviously just the crumbling of the record industry. You know what I mean? It's just like you're going to be selling Axe body spray.
Yeah,
If
that's
you're
true.
going long term.
Yep. Trying to get where does the money come from now?
That's what I'm
Now it is
saying.
consumable. Well, it's got to come from big brands because, like you're talking about, they know a good jingle is going to make you, like Jeep. It was
Dude.
interesting because, like Jeep, Microsoft, you hear about Apple breaking artists.
I know.
It's like, oh, well, yeah. Now Microsoft's going to help break an artist, or
Yeah.
they're just like thinking, okay, well, iTunes is the biggest record label in the world.
I know.
It's crazy to think about it like that, but
totally
you're absolutely
weird.
right. It's true,
Dude, and it's all owned by ad. There's the only people with the money.
right?
They're the only people with the money. It's sick. It's totally sick. I have a tune that is a commercial for a backpack.
Nice.
It's hilarious though. You know what I mean? Like you write this tune and suddenly it's just this backpack commercial. You know what I mean? And like what? Wow, they're totally using this mood to sell this other lifestyle.
Right.
Because that's the thing is like when you're listening to music, when you're listening or watching an ad, you're not just getting like here's the product. You're getting like lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yep. What can I identify with? Why is this important to me as a consumer? Yeah, because it identifies with my lifestyle.
Exactly.
Like you're just talking about. So the music has to do the same.
Absolutely. So it's like, yeah, of course, like Chrysler comes out with like a luxury car, they're not going to be using EDM.
Right. It's going to be classical strings, probably.
Some
Yep.
strings. Absolutely.
Why is South by Southwest completely dominated by Doritos and Mountain Dew?
Mountain Dew. Exactly. I know. And that's the thing is like, they're not stupid.
Right.
Those people have been doing it for years. I feel like pop music took a complete turn for not the worst. It's just it's just strange. It's just like that, there's this whole documentary on like the teenage, demographic that it didn't exist before the 50s. The teenagers were not marketed to.
Oh, okay.
They didn't have jobs.
Okay.
And
So
suddenly
they couldn't buy anything.
Exactly.
Right.
Suddenly there's a big boom from World War II.
Yep.
And all these marketing agencies are like, oh shit, what about these teenagers? Their parents now have like some solid jobs and everything else. There's these amazing industries happening tech wise and whatever. And so now we have this demographic that can, at the very least, demand for their parents to buy Santa Claus, Coca-Cola, all this. You know what I mean?
Right.
It took off in a different way. It was like, yeah, there's Saint Nick, but it didn't mean shit. You got some blue jeans, you know?
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's just become something completely different, you know, because hey, we got the cash, you know, middle class was developed, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so you of course, like 50s, like not, that was teenagers. All these different revolutionary type of moments are all happen with like teens, young, you know, youthful 20s.
That's an interesting point you bring up, you know, because there's an artist that I was helping to promote, and their whole idea and their whole view behind the record was, let's be gone with trends. So let's not talk about social media. Let's do this kind of the old school way. So I was like, all right, who's the best person I can talk to about how to come up with sales ideas? Well, obviously my parents.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, there was no internet. There was nothing. And I was like, all right, guys, so how did artists promote themselves? They're like, oh, we went to the jukebox. We listen to some stuff on the jukebox. I'm like, well, so you're telling me that none of the people in the Beatles or Elvis back then would endorse any car companies, or that he or she wouldn't endorse these other brands? And they're like, no. Like, what? That seems foreign to me.
I know, dude.
Yeah.
It's bizarro.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing is like, you know, like why I feel, and I'm sure it's like, you know, it's exactly like what we're talking about, how you're trapped by what is normal, you know, and what you conceive of, and how difficult it is to even break your own mind from thinking outside of what, you know, all you know. How do you break yourself outside of what you know?
Right.
You know, it's really, really difficult. And so, yeah, exactly. It's like, how do you start to like market yourself beyond like the genre? I've had like a hell of a time. It's been really, really difficult, you know, trying to, you know, break My Brothers and Sisters, because it's like, that's the thing. I want to end identity, you know. I don't really want people to care about me, you know, as a narrative. I'm not interested. I want people to be like, wow, these are really cool songs, you know, because the reality is, when I thought about it, was no one listens to albums anymore. They listen to playlists, you know, or they throw up, you know, whatever it's called, Spotify, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so why would I make an album that all sounds like basically the same, that's preaching the same kind of narrative, the same type of stories? Why not, you know, just with my imagination? And I've been screwed financially.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No.
Because it's like, because, you know, club owners, promoters, or whatever, how do you describe yourself? You know, and it's this conceptual thing, and they're like, yeah, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know who to place you with. And you're like, it doesn't matter who you place us with. We're gonna be, you know, baller.
Yeah, show up and entertain.
That's what we're gonna do. It doesn't really matter, you know. So, but then it just but because everyone is trained to think demographics and blah 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 blah. Then it's like they can't separate themselves to be like, oh, it's just good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Right.
It's just good. You mean it's a collection of good stuff, you know? And that's really well put together and things like that, you know? Like, because everybody is. It's like, I mean, I can imagine like where you're an artist and suddenly, you know, like this is what cracks me up, and I love Garth Brooks for doing this. But do you remember a long time ago where he like made a whole like other identity?
Oh, absolutely.
You remember that?
No,
it was
absolutely.
Like Chris something or whatever. I forget. Well, it's like that was like so bold and ahead of his time to do something like that, and it was like no one gave a shit. You know, he's like, look, I want to do something that's not just Garth Brooks, where everyone thinks of Garth Brooks and doing the same old thing. I want to do something different. So it's like I'm creating this different persona. I mean, fuck, David Bowie did it, but David Bowie's just known for personas. Right. Garth Brooks is not. You know,
I remember being like real dark. Was it like a real dark persona?
Exactly.
I was like, oh shit, I can get down with this dark Garth.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It was just like, and it wasn't as if like he didn't have the players weren't there on the record or anything else. He had this big selection of songwriters or anything else. It was just like, you know, we don't even know how to, you know, make this a thing, you know, or put it as something else or whatever. How many like, you know, musicians where it's, you know, like I say, that they do make these big transitions or whatever, you know, and suddenly it's like, you know, oh, you've betrayed us, you know, you're not whatever. Like, can you imagine if Marilyn Manson put out like a smooth jazz record? You know?
Yeah, to me and you would probably, that sounds amazing.
It sounds, wow, that's would be cool or whatever. But to his following, to his whole record label, he's sold out. This isn't who you are. This is what, you know, and he's like, well, I'm a constantly
musician.
evolving person.
Exactly.
You know, we don't want to hear that noise.
Right.
We want you to always, you know, like
create
represent
this
us.
Goth.
Yeah.
Heavier rock.
And you're like, I'm just a guy.
Right.
You know, now Marilyn Manson's probably like, I don't want to put on this white makeup anymore. But he's got to. You know, he's like, I'm sick of this. You know? But he's got to pay the bills. Sorry, you bought a mansion in Beverly Hills or whatever, and now you have to pay for that son of a bitch. You know what I mean? And you're stuck.
Right.
You're stuck having to constantly do that thing because no one is going to be, a record label is not going to be interested. They'll drop. I mean, like, I'm sure you've heard of like how like cold-blooded.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They are.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no allegiance.
No,
it's
none
bottom line. Always.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we don't give a shit if you've sold, you know, like whatever, 300,000, whatever, a million records. If the next record you're not selling, then you maybe have like one more record left. And if you don't sell, we're dropping you.
Yeah, they're not going to do the option. Or they might just even shelve that one. If they go out to a test group and they're like, oh, no one likes this. We're going to take all your hard work, just put it up on a shelf, and we own the master, so you guys can never release it.
Exactly. Yeah. And people don't realize that that's the business.
Yeah.
They have no idea that it's like, it's that calculated. No matter like what, like, again, like I send, you know, songs to artists all the time, you know? So it's like, you'll have this big list. Here's all these artists that are in like my agent's database who are now looking, you know? And you would think that it's like some of these people are like, oh yeah, they're writing their own stuff. They have that persona.
Right.
Nope. Sorry to break it to you.
Right. Right.
You know, but Hootie and the Blowfish needs something that sounds like Hootie and the Blowfish again.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because I forget that people don't realize that.
They do not.
They
think it's just like, oh, wow, like they're a bunch of friends that got together and then they just made some music and it all sounds good.
Right. And it sounds awesome and completely on point with everything else. Yep. Yeah.
Not like that.
Yeah, you forget as a musician or even in being in the industry that people don't think about that.
And it's exactly how it works. It's just like we're not talking about like because they don't think about the label. That's what's genius about labels. That's what's genius about marketing. Because it's Trident, you know, or whatever, to use the same thing. It's like that's the marketing firm that's doing that isn't Trident.
Right.
They just paid some agency to do that. It's the same thing. We have this big record label. No one talks about the record labels really.
Right.
You know, you know what I mean? Not anymore, but especially even back then, it was like, oh, they're on Columbia Records. I know that Columbia Records equals big records.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
But I don't.
Who are the big three? Who are the big,
Right. But they don't, but they're not like, how does it work?
That's true.
You know, no one's interested, again, in that. Because the whole thing is like, you know, it's the Wizard of Oz. It's the guy behind the curtain,
right?
You know, that they're like, you know, I mean, have you seen what's it called? God, it's not In the Shadows Motown. It's the other one with the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew.
Oh, the Wrecking Crew. Right? I watched half of that documentary.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's like it's not it's what the Mamas and the Papas.
Yep.
They're on the front cover. And everyone who else is playing the music are these sick-ass musicians.
Right. And these sick-ass songwriters. Or having like songwriters, you know, the same songwriter have like 15 top 10 hits or like 3 going on in parallel in the top 5.
I know.
Yeah.
It was 500 songs were shopped for Thriller.
Wow.
500. That's unreal.
That's crazy.
That's So it's
That's
like
crazy.
We're gonna go. Okay, hey, Michael Jackson needs 10
right
top award-winning songs. Paul McCartney's gonna be on one of them. You know, and so they send out like whatever their people to look for different badass songwriters.
Right.
They aggregate all of that stuff. They listen to it all, and they narrow it down.
Yeah. Or even like what Rihanna did on her last album, right? They bring in camps. They have these camps, bring in all the best songwriters, And then they're like, okay. And then she comes in, well, I kind of like that. I'm going to go with this and this. That's why my wife was like, this Rihanna album's amazing. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing because you got all the fucking best songwriters.
Dude, Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
Whitney Houston is like, yeah, like Clive Davis, right?
Yeah.
He was like, he's not stupid. He hears, this woman's amazing. She's a freak of nature.
Right.
We're going to bring her in and get everybody, the top in the whole entire industry.
Yeah.
They're not stupid, you know, like, but people want to think like it's Whitney,
right? She's right, all that stuff. She's an amazing musician.
She's amazing.
She's a visionary.
Oh wow, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's a crew that is unreal,
yeah,
on this in the smallest detail,
right?
You know, and so yeah, it's just like you have, like I said, like these marketing agencies who are absolutely trying to keep demographics buying the same stuff, you know, and also creating new demographics by creating different outlets. So, you know, like I would say, you know, something that's, you know, and like, if you see Hype.
I haven't. It's in my queue though.
Because you're Seattle,
yeah,
right?
I'm Seattle.
Okay, so Hype is like the movie to like really watch and go, God damn, here's a new demographic started because of the type of musical artistic scene, you know? And what do? They go, okay, but this is basically what they're wearing.
Right.
Now let's make our own stuff. We'll sell it at JCPenney's for $100 for a flannel shirt.
Right.
And the rest of, you know, the homogenous nature of the giant marketing agencies or whatever, just everyone, Dillard's, you know, all these different companies are now just glomming on to that trend, you know, and then people who are interested, you know, aesthetically, philosophically with that type of like, you know, indie kind of rebellion are just sucked right in to that corporate hellhole, you know, because they're just trying to belong. You know what I mean? They're trying to belong to a type of philosophy or whatever that even if it has like some purity to it, it's lost immediately once they glom onto it. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's really depressing.
It is.
This interview is taken like, we need to start talking about like the craziest conspiracies possible after this.
Actually, let's talk about that. What do you think? Do you think Kurt Cobain committed suicide? Do you think it was Courtney Love?
I could see both of them doing it.
Yeah.
You know, together. You know, like
I remember when that shit happened. I was in Seattle, and I remember my buddies they were so devastated by it. And then, you know, went to his house, and at that time when it happened, it was like, oh, there's a suicide note, and no one even thought about it.
Of course, yeah.
And I don't know.
But I've seen like the Kurt and Courtney, like when it first came out, you know, at a sleazy fine arts theater or whatever, back in like 2000 or something.
She's fucking bonkers.
Dude, yeah, exactly.
She's crazy.
But it's just like, I mean, that it's strange. It's just like what I think is like so interesting, like I feel like at his point, because it's like, here's clearly a prolific creative artist, yeah. And it's just like, you know, those trappings of being like, I went, you know, you go punk rock because you realize all this facade, and then suddenly you're caught up in the facade.
Exactly.
How depressing that is. That now you're like Captain Facade.
Right.
And you didn't ever think that.
You don't know how to deal with it.
But you're just swept up in it.
Yep.
All of a sudden. Like that's seriously an existential crisis, you know, on top of dealing with a maniac, you know, in your house and all kinds of drugs.
Yeah.
You know, so what can I see her killing somebody? Hell yeah. But I can see him killing himself too.
True.
So that's what makes it. If it wasn't like Stevie Wonder suddenly dating Courtney Love, you know.
That's true.
It was both toxic people.
Yeah.
Two toxic people. So you're like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they.
The only definitive statement I have about Kurt Cobain's death is that was the best thing to happen to David Grohl.
Oh, dude, no fucking
That was the best thing to happen to him.
No question. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it was like, there'd be no Dave Grohl.
Right. And how influential is Foo Fighters?
Dude,
and you know, that's the crazy
My hero, when I first heard that, I was like, damn, this fucking tune is badass.
Yeah, dude. That entire first record that he did everything on his own.
Yeah.
I remember it coming out and it's got that toy gun on the front. I forgot what the name is, but it's like, oh my God. This guy played drums for Nirvana.
Yeah.
Like, why the hell? And you know, you watch, what is that? Sonic Highways.
Yeah.
And Dave Grohl talks about, well, I was kind of afraid bringing stuff up to Kurt because I didn't know if I was good enough. I'm like, holy shit.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
you're fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. It's just like his work with Queens of the Stone Age.
Yes.
That album, that was another album that totally changed my,
Yeah.
It made me a better guitar player.
Really?
Goddamn yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, Josh Homme is just like, he's like, he's one of these, I've seen some in interviews and everything else, and really interesting or whatever, but it's funny because it was like, he had no training really whatsoever, so he didn't even know what a pick was, and so, it was cool. It was just like, wow, here's someone who's like really put in the time to learn these scales and try to make his own little strange different things that are his voice,
right?
But it's just like, but yeah, that album, as far as like just conceptually how it's laid out, song structures, groove, like I don't know of another like band that, besides Rage, who has such like intense groove, but accompanied with like melody and being so like heavy and hard, just like. I saw them on their tour.
Oh, nice.
Queens.
Yeah.
And it was like, they're just spot the fuck on.
Oh, man.
It was just like, damn.
It took me a while to get in that band, but yeah.
I was, me too. Like, but once Songs for the Deaf came on, I was like, this is badass.
Yeah, game over.
Yeah, game over.
Yeah.
Go with the flow. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But the whole like, whatever, cocaine, whatever, the Adderall, that whole thing, I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, it's way too long. This is the Hey Jude of drug tunes.
Oh, man. So let's talk about what you got going on right now.
Oh.
What are you working on, man?
Well, I got this Halloween show that's going on, The Last Rites, and it's, like this. So the last 3 years, or 2 years, I've been working on, figuring out how to do what I want, which is basically bring a film to life. And so with projections, and then like the actual songs are being played, live to those films, and narrowing all of that stuff down, as well as how to put together a badass show. Like from start to finish, the energy is constant and never stops and never lulls. And that's really like my big thing. Like when you have lighting, you have sound, and obviously like the way that you're arranging the sounds themselves, so this year it's going to be 3 days, and we're teamed up with Full Moon Productions, who own all the crazy haunted houses and everything down at the West Bottoms. So we're able to like use all their lighting, all of their shit, to put on like an insane show. And so I'm really excited because it's like these full-on insane costumes that we can do and really, like I say, bring this film to life. There'll be this whole ritual that's like full of mystique. 9:30 is when it starts. So if you're not there, the door's shut until it's over, and then you're allowed in. So you have to be there by the time of the ceremony begins.
The ceremony.
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
And it's like it's very, tribal, like electric, druid type of vibe. So futuristic, post-apocalyptic, but having these occulty, type of eyes wide shut feel.
Okay.
Along with like this kind of, like I said, it's really, it's crazy.
That sounds awesome.
I know, it's awesome. So I'm working hard on that, and then Stefan Singleton, an artist I've been working with, finishing up his record. So those are like my main focus right now, is getting his record to be like as pristine as possible. I just recorded strings, for his record, and it's like this. I don't know if you've heard him, but his voice, like I feel like the best singers are women. Mm-hmm. They hit a sonic place that men just cannot hit, and he is like as close to that as possible.
Yeah, I saw a video on YouTube where you and him just did something acoustic.
Oh, yeah.
Towards the end,
right?
I was like, holy shit, this dude can sing his ass off.
He can sing his ass off.
Yeah.
I know. And so, yeah, working with him was like really, it's been really cool because, he comes in with lyrics, melody, and then I structure everything.
Nice.
And so put together the whole entire palette, vibe, like all of that kind of stuff. But being like I'm very conscientious of really trying to capture the soul of the song, you know, being like, okay, like you can do all kinds of different stuff, but if it does not, you know, if it's not harmonious with where it starts, I've gone off. So it's like, what is that point? You know what I mean? Where you're like, you know, taking it in like a way just because it, you know, it, I don't know, suits your fancy or something, rather than like, does this serve the song? It always has to. So it's been really, really exciting because he works in all these different, you know, genres, you know, and so, you know, you're able to, you know, like just with, you know, the My Brothers and Sisters record, I'm able to work with all of these different elements, but because he is the one voice and representation of it, it makes it all way more cohesive, way more like, you know, I feel like most people would be able to get it, even though it has all of these different styles represented.
Right, but you still have to be careful though when you're doing that. And then how do you structure the album once you have all the songs done? I mean,
exactly.
You're absolutely right that the vocals do help maintain that consistency, but even when you're jumping around to different genres, you have to be extremely careful.
I know. Well, I mean, and it's hard because it's just like, one, it's like definitely for the most part very pop. It's very like, it definitely has electronic components throughout, groove based, you know. I think that like there's one song on it that is like very like heavy old school Capitol Records jazz orchestra type of thing. Totally different than the rest of the record. And it's basically like, I either cut this, you know, I don't make it what it actually wants to be to fit in this type of thing, or I make it like absolutely gorgeous. And again, it's like, it's looking at that kind of stuff really long term. If it was just short term and be like, he only has like this window, you know, to success, you know, and I only have this window. Well, then I'm going to probably make a decision based upon money and marketing. When this song he might sing his ass off and might be gorgeous or whatever, but, you know, when we're shopping this around, you know, we're not also stupid. Like, we're also going to go, oh, you know, who may be really, really great on this song and who might be able to sell it is like Michael Bublé. Right. So it's, for one, the album, for me, is like, albums period are almost dead. You know?
Oh yeah, it's all single driven now.
It's all single driven.
Singles and then playlists like you're talking
exactly.
about.
Like that's what I'm saying. So it's just like, so I'm making this because of the love, you know? Because I know that in general, if he was to be picked up by a label, right? Which is exactly what he's hoping for, and I hope for him, you know? They're going to want to record most things over again. Right. Which thankfully I have the charts.
Maybe
Sometimes
not. When you send demos to labels, they're like, yeah, this is great. Then they just put that out.
Yeah. And that's fine. I'm just saying,
but
like,
you're right.
I'm just, you know what I mean? Like,
you want to bring in like someone different, maybe change it around a little
exactly.
bit.
Exactly. And I realize that that's the game. And so, I would much rather, you know, go full throttle, with like, you know, being as honest as possible to what is needed of the music. Because there's enough material there that works together, you know, as far as like, this is a cohesive unit record. It's, you know, like I said, electronic, you know, and it's got some dirty rock tones, you know, in it. Is that if I abandon this song, I'm probably screwing myself of the opportunity to learn a ton and to make this song that's really important to him and make his dreams come true and being able to go, you know, because it is a crazy special thing working with him, for like, and it makes me appreciate singers in a totally different way, where it's like, they have to be able to completely let go and give, you know what I mean? Like, we're talking like amazing singers. You know, we're talking like Christina's and Whitney's and, you know, Marvin Gaye's, that level. Well, even if they can play a little, they generally don't play on stage, because all of their focus needs to be on absolutely letting go and giving all of their emotion, and concentration to that music. And within that, it's like you talk about the kind of person that you have to be able to do that.
Especially with vocals, because it's way more personal.
Exactly.
And lyrics, yeah.
Exactly. And when I hear like I like to sing, but I'm not that kind of guy to let go to that level. I absolutely give my all. Right. But what I'm saying is just like, I am my headspace is wired differently than theirs, right? Than the great singers. It just is. Yeah. And I've come to totally appreciate that. So a great singer, basically, here I have this amazing instrument, this amazing emotion, these amazing emotions to be able to inject myself, through this. But I am absolutely dependent on other people to structure songs, to do all of that, theory work and all the, orchestrating, all of these different things. I'm completely dependent on that. And so when coming to him, and he doesn't have that type of background and tools to be able to play all these different instruments and everything, and you get to go like make this bed for his voice to lay in perfectly, it is totally gratifying to like watch someone's dreams come true before your eyes. And they're like, oh my God, not only does this person believe in me, right, but they have absolutely put in a shit ton of work to make me shine. Mm-hmm. And that's really gratifying for me. It's really gratifying. And so, I really look forward to this old jazz Capitol Records kind of song because, and I've said this before, one of my favorite tunes and like orchestral peaks that is like a challenge to me thus far is Nature Boy, done by Nat King Cole. And you listen to that song and, there was a boy, very strange enchanted boy, that tune. It's the orchestration behind that is like, oh my God, this is delicate as hell. It's really hard. And they had to do it in one take. Yeah. Yeah. And so having to go, okay, here's this tune called Fine Feeling Blue. And it's like that level where I'm like sensing, I'm like, that's what it wants. And so I either got to be like, freaked out, and run from that, or just do it. Yeah. And so it's really meaningful to me to not only am I making someone's dreams come true, that their dreams, are in line with mine in this weird way, but they test me, Yeah. Are you ready? Right. To even think that you're able to do that yet, because it's serious stuff. Like, those guys orchestrating that stuff, they're old. They're 70 years old, been playing classical music forever, Right. And so it's just like, it's makes me sweat just thinking about it, Yeah. But it's like, but how much would that cost a label now? How much would that cost for them to go, I'm hiring an arranger, bringing in all of these musicians?
Oh, it wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen. So it's only going to happen with me. Yeah. And so that makes it feel like an important moment to be able to, go full on in. Yeah. So I'm doing it. Yeah. Regardless, because it just feels like that. It feels like this is important, not just to him, like, I just want to make him happy. It's just like, I feel like that's the thing. The labels now they've cut out A&R, to even let's talk about how they're totally different. You know what I mean? Yeah. They've cut out A&R.
That's right. They're not developing bands.
They're not developing.
They want the bands at the very peak and then just sell where they're at their peak and then discard them. You're
exactly. Right. They throw them away.
Yeah. Think about if Rolling Stones and Aerosmith tried coming up in this era. Wouldn't happen.
Would never happen. Right. It would never happen. And people do not get that. They're just like, look, we want you already polished. We want you to have like merch. We want to have all of these different things like already ready to go before we do spend a dime on you. Yep. And then when we spend a dime on you, it's actually just a loan.
Exactly. Along with some pretty nasty interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, what the hell? Like, so, and they're not interested. And that's why like all these artists as well is like, they have to like be sponsored by L'Oreal or whatever makeup, you know, and different, you know, that's how they're getting their money.
Yeah.
They don't have songwriting royalties because they probably didn't. The only way that they can make money now is touring, you know, and you better be playing some big ass tours, you know, and also like ad placement.
Right.
Because they trademark. That's the thing, is like one of the deals with labels that I've learned is like, if you don't have your shit trademarked already, well, they're not even going to take you seriously.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that's why I think it's so important these days to have independent labels.
Oh, dude.
Because they're doing the A&R role that the majors used to do.
Yep.
I mean, they've done it the entire time, but now it's
They did it the whole time.
So more important. It's so much more important for these independent labels to be around.
I know.
So that these artists have a way to develop themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so difficult because it's just like, again, we're talking about these gigantic teams that you're competing with.
Yep.
That have the resources that are just like
ridiculous. Yeah.
Ridiculous. People do not get it.
Right.
You know, that it's just like, and the whole payola thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's for real.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
It's like you're not
since day one of radio.
For day one. You're not going to get played on the radio unless some record exec has paid off whatever corporate, you know, entity who owns all these other record stations, like $40,000.
Yep. Sure.
Some program director. That's the only way you get. If your music's on top 40, someone got paid.
Right. Exactly.
Just face it.
Just believe it. Yeah. Because it. Yep.
You know. So I mean that's and it's hard because we think that it's like, oh, these radio stations are tastemakers, and they're not. They're just collecting checks.
Right.
They're just that's it. You know, and it just creates like a culture that, like us, you know, we've talked about even more, who are like, one, more scared to take chances, you know, on like, you know, like Black Sabbath. You think you know what I mean? Like, think about how pinnacle they were at that time. You know, there was nothing like Black Sabbath around at all. And someone took a chance. They're like, this is crazy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Just because they're like, this is crazy back then. At least we had those guys. But now everyone's like, you know, like being marketing savvy is like part of like, you know, like is part of survival.
Oh, it's absolutely part of survival. The biggest part of survival. I would say you spend $100,000 to make a record, you're going to spend $400,000 to market that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. And yeah, I mean, and like, how are you going to make that? How are you going to make that a band? Make that back? You split that between 6 people.
Right.
Not to mention like I mean it's like, it's not 6 people, it's like your whole entire like tour. So you have like all these people that tour with you, all the back end people, like
all those people,
hired musicians that are hired on to
all
do
the producer
it.
points on the records, the audio engineers. Yep.
There's no way.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, so how do you do it? It's like, you know, like it's clearly why, you know, like obviously I love doing these things, but it's like you need to have multiple fires going.
Right.
You know, because you have no idea what the hell's going to catch on.
Which one's going to catch
on? It's bizarre. Like, you're like, really?
It's depressing too, right? At the same time.
It's so depressing.
Like, man, if that guy could focus in on just this one thing, how much greater would he be?
I know.
As opposed to having to spread himself across, he or she across 5 or 6 things.
I know. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, but it is. It's a part of the survival thing. It's absolutely a necessity because it's like, you know, like that, there's such a naivete where it's, you know, even within the artist, that's like the saddest part for me is like when there's still artists coming up and they're not to the level of being like, it's dog eat dog, baby. Like, that's it. And so if you think that it's just like, guys, we just need to practice, you know, a couple times a week, you know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, like get some t-shirts. It's like, you're not in the game.
Nope. Now it's just an expensive hobby for you.
That's right.
It's never going to be refreshing until you do like what you're doing. Music day in, day out.
Is it?
Yeah.
I know. And being able to like I said, is make, you know, like those contacts of people who are like really highly skilled, you know, and not just, you know, like like you're wanting to get fans, but it's like, especially in Kansas City, I mean, just talking about Kansas City, like the saddest part is like there's such a separation between people who go see live music, you know, and people who like do not, you know, like anything local whatsoever.
Sure.
There's a huge divide.
Huge, yeah.
And because it's like, I would say that if out of the population, maybe 5%, it may be less, are actually going to see live music, you know, or are a part of live music at all.
Right.
You know, 5%. So you have 95% of people who are not. And so that creates a culture of just the 5% being in competition with each other and passing the same $5 around over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, and how do you get above that?
Right.
You know, it's just like, it's the trickiest thing when you're just like, when KC lacks such an infrastructure, you know, like it's not like talent. We don't lack talent. It has nothing to do with that. We lack infrastructure. It all exists in Los Angeles and New York.
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. That was the biggest thing I noticed. One of the biggest things when I first moved here from Seattle was like, where are the buses?
Yeah.
Do I have to drive seriously 45 minutes to go somewhere?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it is the infrastructure.
It
You're
is.
absolutely right.
I mean, it's just like, it's just not here. Like, you know, there's the international travel through Kansas City is not as much as New York and LA.
Yeah.
The amount of like the industry itself is just not as connected, you know, and so, you know, how do you, you know, like, okay, well, the internet, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, you don't get it. You know, like what people don't understand about contacts, you know, I think is because, you know, people can be really, really shady in trying to like connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And where it's just like, this is just this one-sided thing, you know? And I feel like everyone's made the mistake of like trying to figure that out. You know, where you want to like be connected with this person, but it's like you don't really necessarily, you can't really bring anything to the table to this person,
Right.
you know, and there's no point, you know, and so it just becomes all about you, you know, and so if there's not any level of like, you know, you can contribute on this other scale and you want to work with this person in some other way, well, then it's gone. But it's like the contacts that like, that's how things happen, you know? Is real things happen because relationships happen.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Relationships are the most important
They're
thing.
the most important thing. And so rather than just like, you know, constantly filling up your social media with a million different things, it's like, who do you really want to work with? Who, you know what I mean? Who really inspires you? Who like may have like a piece of the puzzle that you don't have, but you have a piece of the puzzle that they don't have.
Right. How can you make each other better?
How can you make each other better? Like that's what people need to be looking out for, because rather than just like, and again, with the band thing, it's even that there is like, you know, a collective of like, yeah, local bands and etc. It's still very much like my tour, my band.
Yep.
You know, it's about me.
And in a sense, it's like, okay, they work, some bands who get really big locally or really big, you know, semi-nationally. In a sense, you can kind of understand from their standpoint, like, well, they work their ass off, so they don't want to share that. But then on the other hand, it's like, now you have this platform to help expose people that you were previously at.
Exactly.
Right? So, you know, how do you want to utilize that?
Absolutely. Well, and I feel like it's hard. It's like, it's absolutely why, like, there's like, you know, that people don't even understand that now that the internet is there, there's even more filters of the industry to be able to get the contacts that like you'd be able to help somebody, they would be able to help you. It's even harder. So it's like, you know, like before it was, okay, you have to, you know, maybe possibly get an agent.
Right.
Right.
Or get a lawyer or
something. Or get a lawyer.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh my God, the amount of agents that are out there, and most of them suck, you know? And then secondly, there's filters beyond that. So there's just constantly, there's even more doors that are, you know, put up,
right?
You know, to like have to knock on and to hammer down and blah, 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 just to be able to get to the person that, you know, is legit. And so one of the things that I've like found that have been extremely gratifying that I've seen that I've benefited from is like, forget the creative and tech people, like anyone who's behind the scenes is a lot easier to access, and they're going to know a lot more about the field.
It's interesting.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's not the producers or whatever. It's like you're talking to engineers or like
Right.
whatever. Like, there's a guy, like my tech support, I have a total bromance with my tech support guy, you know?
Sure.
And
sure.
it's like, you know, he loves helping out and everything. And like, I'm a great client because I'm not like, I'm a complete moron,
Right.
you know? And so I'm asking interesting questions that at least inspires him,
Yeah.
you know, to talk about things. But it's like, but that's the thing is like, everyone wants to focus on the front of the cereal box. They don't want to look at the ingredients.
Yeah.
But it's in the ingredients where there's even more contexts that are possibly better,
Right.
possibly even better people,
Yeah.
just easier to work with. Because they're like, I don't need to be on the front of the box, you know?
Yeah.
I don't need to have that ego. I just want to do a good job,
Yeah.
you know? And so there's plenty of people out there or whatever, but no one thinks about contacting them. Tons of great illustrators.
Yeah.
Like it's an incredible world, you know, out there, but I feel like everyone's looking at the same, you know, out the same window trying to
Sure.
get the same people.
Right.
And it's always the people who are like, you know, front of the box.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like the side door has a host,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
has a host of other like really great you know, like I said, technological professionals and everything else and musicians that are absolutely like willing to spend your time. But it's like, you just have to come from like a really honest place.
Yeah. Genuine, honest place. You're right.
You can't just be like, hey, so do you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I heard you worked with this guy on this record, you know?
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
And they realize you're not interested in me, you're interested in them.
Yep. You're interested in that name.
You know what I'm
and how
saying?
It's going to sell records.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, no one wants to deal with that shit,
Right.
you know? Like, it's bogus. So I feel like navigating those realms, especially on the tech end, just become more honest in general, because I have absolute questions that are like we talked about, like aux sends
Right.
and everything. I need to know this. Obviously, you need to know it. My lack of expertise lets your expertise shine, you know? And I'm totally appreciative because now I have a new tool to work with all these other great creative things on.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're awesome, you know? And so, and this tech guy didn't even start out to be like that. It was like, oh, one call and then, you know, whatever. It's over a year where now this guy's like an amazing beat maker.
Nice.
Like insane, like crazy beat mavericks. But it's just like, this is a year of
Yeah.
like contacting several tech support people. And now it's like, I've met or whatever, contacted him 3 times. And now we're like, hey man, you know what I mean?
Yeah, dude.
And
You
he's
built that
across the
relationship.
exactly.
You built that relationship.
But
you're
it was
talking
based
about.
upon like something real,
Right.
and not just like, what can you do for me?
Right.
You know, which is like, all label people, you know, I've got to be sick to death of that shit. You know, so there's got to be like some kind of thing, like, you know, I imagine like they throw away albums. You can't send unsolicited material.
Right.
They throw it out.
Yep. That's how they filter.
That's how they filter.
That's how they filter.
They unsolicited. Don't bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, in the can. You know, same thing as like record stores and everything. It's like no one's buying new vinyl. I've talked to all these different record people or whatever, and so it's just like, if they're buying new vinyl, it's because they just love supporting. They don't make any money. Everyone's buying like, you know, whatever, Parliament.
Yeah.
That's what they're buying.
Right. Right.
Is old 70s.
You think that's because that stuff was actually recorded for vinyl? It wasn't recorded in digital, and then let's just throw it on a record because people are into.
No, I think people, it's just like now finally, like there's just people didn't know, like the whole soul revival thing is interesting to me, because it's like, you know, a lot of like, you know, Leon Bridges.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Leon Bridges like strikes me as like really strange in the way that it's like that here's this thing that's like starting to come out again or whatever, but it's same thing like with Mumford and Sons or anything else, where it's strange to me because it's like quoting like you like, and this is not dissing Mumford and Sons or Leon Bridges. What's strange to me is just like, you're not from this time
Right.
at all. and you're absolutely putting it on as if you are. That's
100%.
strange.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. You're absolutely right, because like Leon Bridges, he plays to the T. Like if he was to come up in like the 50s or the 60s, fit right in, dude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so something about that for me like rings as like disingenuous in a way, because it's like you were raised on Rage Against the Machine. We were all raised on all of the same stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
But do you think that maybe he was like, that was all?
no way.
You don't think
It's
so?
impossible.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. Even like, you know, I mean, it's just like I have a poster of me with a Vanilla Ice poster.
Sure. You have
Right?
a poster of
A
you
poster
with a Vanilla Ice poster?
that I got for my birthday.
Nice.
All right. And this is the whole thing is like, right? Like this was probably like whatever, 1990,
yeah,
something
early
like that.
90s, sure.
Exactly. And it was like clearly like, you know, and like my, you know, all I'm saying is that this was the Midwest and here I am with a Vanilla Ice poster. That's pretty pervasive like culture. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just like that, and that's and why, you know, why Vanilla Ice? It's, you know, of course it's just like these labels dumped a bunch of money into here's this white rapper.
Yeah.
You know?
But you don't think that maybe in the case of like a Leon Bridges or a Mumford and Sons that they just enjoyed that era of music so much?
Oh no, I'm not saying that they don't.
Right.
What I'm saying is like it's that like D'Angelo likes that music too,
Right.
but he also progressed through the time.
That's true. So you see it perhaps maybe it's like a marketing gimmick.
I do.
Maybe if the music was there, is it because the music and the persona just so hand in hand?
Yeah, I think it's that, but it's also like we talked about, like we can't deny the marketing behind it.
Yeah.
We just can't.
That's right. You can pinpoint on
You
it.
can pinpoint. It's like that's the thing is like we all grew up like looking at the same kind of clothes and like you know, all of these same things, and being able to go like, you know, here's this new trend that's caught on since I would say Amy Winehouse, you know, Duffy and like, you know, all of that. When I went to London, you know, right before that was coming out, and all those kids, that's what they were dancing to in the clubs.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was a random like bar. It wasn't like I scouted it out for the music.
Right.
That's just what they were jamming to, you know? And I think it's just because, hey, that time in history, you know, is so like, you know, idealized. It's not, you know, like I want to be a part of something that's that extreme and revolutionary and all of these different, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And also like, you know, where it's representing this type of thing where, you know, in music, why we talk about why it's so powerful. Well, that music really brought people together.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no denying the power of like Motown. You know, socially,
Right.
it was huge.
Right.
And so I think there's a craving, you know, for that. But I also think that Leon Bridges, maybe he had like, you know, he could play guitar and he did a song and then people were like, bink, these marketing guys. Because when I watched it, I was like, this is like the CIA thing. I saw it live and I was like, this is some government thing. And I never have that. I'm not like that.
Right,
But I
right.
was like, this is so weird. And my friend Charles, who plays trumpet, he was there too. We thought the exact same thing. We were like, how do we both think this is some weird conspiracy? And we're not like that. You know, we're not like thinking everything is a conspiracy or something. Not that I don't think some things are. But, you know,
sure.
as a musical act,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
But you're just like, oh my god, like this is so strange because, like I said, I was like, I'm a big D'Angelo fan, and all of the, you know, like my, you know, especially like black friends who grew up playing gospel music and everything else, they don't play gospel music like they used to. It's different. Right? It's changed. It's evolved.
Right.
You know, there's insane cool breaks, but I think people are now like catching on to that. And rather than, this is all getting back to the vinyl and going like, does it sound better on vinyl? No. I think it's just that people are now going like, oh, what's this thing called soul? And they weren't raised with it.
Right.
they just weren't. They wasn't in their house, you know, or whatever. Like if their parents were listening to the Stones and they were more like that, you know, Britpop, rock and roll, Led Zeppelin, and they weren't privy to whatever Motown or Stax or anything else like that, they're like, wow, this is cool, you know. And maybe I don't want to be so angry anymore. Like it's what's so interesting about like the banjo and punk rock. There is an absolute correlation between going like, well, I'm sick of being really pissed off and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like doing the same like club thing over and over and over again because I'm wiser. Now I'm more mature. You know, I don't want to just smash a bottle on my head and spit out into a crowd. I realize that maybe that's rude. You know? It's like you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying and so what happens is like, you know, you get like these, you know, like alt country, you know, is absolutely like people who have grown up from punk rock, you know, and they're like, look, there is another sensitive side to me.
Right.
Okay. You know, so maybe I want to play the acoustic guitar or whatever and, you know, go down these types of roads. Well, what else talks about, you know, like being like, you know, poor and, you know, well, country music does, you know, and I'm white. And so I relate to that. You know what I mean? It's like I've just seen the whole like, you know, social distortion and like all these different types of things happen where it's like they started out young or whatever and they were like, you know, straight up loud punk rock, you know, I've just seen it. And then suddenly there's an acoustic guitar suddenly comes into the picture. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, you know, like at Green Day. It's just like time of your life.
Right. Well, so even
and now
doing
you're
a
in a
fucking
musical
Broadway play.
That's
yes.
what I'm saying.
Yes.
There's a certain amount of maturity that is like, maybe I don't want to just scream anymore. I want to sing. I want to like reach some deeper level of part of me, you know, and what's outlet am I going to take? And so I feel like that's the same way is like, it kind of the whole collective unconscious or whatever. It works the same way. It's like there's a lot of people who want to get back to what they think the 60s represented in like soul music and everything else. There's a more unifying force, you know, and something to like, now I can like dance to this as well, you know, and it represents this type of aesthetic. So I definitely think that like why, you know, because for me, it's like I've listened to soul music my whole entire life, you know, it's like, I am not saying I'm done with it or whatever, like, that's old hat or whatever, but I'm definitely listening to other music. Right. You know, that's not my thing, is soul music. It's like, you know, I'm into EDM. I'm into, you know, like everything. Right. I like it all. Right. And so, but people are glomming onto that because it's like I'm reaching a different phase in my life that my previous like anger doesn't serve. You know, it just doesn't serve. And I want to have a better time. I want to be happier. I want to have a more positive outlook. And, but I still feel foreign, you know, to get on to like the modern R&B train because I wasn't raised with that, you know, and anyone who was, like my mom would drive up blasting the Fugees to pick me up from school. Yeah. So I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like she was like, she's hip. You know, and was always into dance music, you know, and so that was normal, you know, and so to go down, you know, any route of like hip hop or, you know, dance music at all is like, this is not a big deal for me because I was raised like this, but a lot of people were not. Their dads are like Rolling Stones, that's it. Yeah. Like
Zeppelin,
that's it. You got Zeppelin, you got your Dylan, you got your Pink Floyd. Yeah, that's a lot of people. Yeah, that's a lot of people, and I don't identify with that. You know, my mom did not. She didn't like rock music. Of course, that's why I was like, I need the Cannibal Corpse record. You know. Like,
that's right. What's the meanest pissed off thing you have?
Horrible thing that you have. Do you have anything pissed off mothers section in the record store? Take me there. Yeah. You know?
Dude, I'm the exact same way.
Dude, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then, but it's just like, this just does not serve me anymore over and over and over again. I can't wake up in the fucking morning and listen to something that's like 186 BPM screaming at me.
You know what's a bummer though? Was I was like, Yeah, I've been really getting into podcasts as of like the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Before podcasts, I was like, man, am I ever going to get to that age where I just don't want to listen to music? I just want to listen to people talking. There's no fucking way.
Yeah, totally.
You wake up one day, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
this is pretty interesting.
This is pretty interesting. That's what I'm saying, and I don't think it's like it's certainly not a bad thing. It's just like you have to grow, and if you don't, you're stale.
Well,
especially
you're not living.
as a writer, you're not living, man. And so it's
especially
like,
as a writer, you're right.
Especially as a writer, it's just like you know. I mean, like I cannot imagine how frustrating it is to be some artist, like I said, Marilyn Manson, who's like, God damn it. You know, talk about like when we talk about theory and formula, and don't you just end up doing like the same thing? Well, fuck yeah, you do.
Yeah, or like Linkin Park.
Or like Linkin Park or whatever. It's just like, yeah, you're gonna do the same shit, you know, because you're not growing. You're stuck,
right? You
know, and you're just like, oh, I got to do this one thing or else I die,
right?
You know, and I think that there's definitely like that, you know, like that crazy subconscious weight of survive is so fucking like is a gigantic, you know, factor in our decision making that we just don't even know.
It is, yeah.
You know, it just I would have called myself a sellout so many times when I was if my younger self were here talking about, you know, I'm selling backpacks now using my music.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's just like, dude, like, you know, one of the reasons you thought that you had to go down that road is your own thinking of survival.
Right.
You know, is like, well, I mean, there was nothing in like my framework of, you know, oh, you don't just have to be like the, you know, like the artist star. You can do all these other things. These are all really cool things, and all these people are really interesting. There's nobody to say that, so I thought you have to be the star.
Yeah, yeah. And exactly. And at that point too, you're under the impression, okay, if I'm not touring, if I'm not on the top 10, I'm not making it. Well, it's like, well, what is really making it?
That's right.
Are you paying your bills? Are you being able to play music, not having to do a side job?
Exactly.
Okay, then you've pretty much made it. You can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, and it just becomes like and beyond, like with money and everything else, it's just like, it doesn't mean shit. It's just life is going to be fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's just always hard.
Right.
You know, it's just more complex, you know, and so what's difficult just always becomes, you know, whatever. I would have reacted, you know, much more caustically, you know, to a lot of things that I don't, because I'm just like, I need my energy.
Yeah.
I need my fucking energy to stay positive and to do the right things, because it's hard to always do that, you know, every day wake up and be like, this is not the fun thing to do artistically, but you have to schedule a bunch of these, you know, I mean, how admin is the worst fucking thing in the world, isn't it?
It is.
It's the worst.
It is the worst. It is the worst.
It's the fucking worst. Can you do it this time? No.
So let's get our schedules together.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, like I'm shooting a video. I've started to do this, but for this track on this record, Pello Bella, super surrealistic and everything, cinematic, you know. But it's like getting all of those people together.
Oh man,
fuck,
impossible.
It's just like, you know, like, is your dog available on Thursday evening to run through a cemetery?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And, you know, it's just like, it's a nightmare of emails. Like, I'm sure your phone is constantly blown up with all kinds of bullshit.
Yeah.
Not fun, not exciting, no good news.
Nah, dude, got to write this pitch deck because we got to get sponsoring for this, because we got to, you know, do this. And
yeah.
It's like,
And aren't you thinking most of the time, a big project comes, you have to think about that son of a bitch like a year in advance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do because, you know, being a musician, you kind of want to be spontaneous.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the fun part about it. Yeah, but it's like,
a year.
Yep. Even trying to book shows, you got to go out 6 months.
That's what I'm saying.
Try to get a hold on a venue, you got to go out 6 months.
Exactly. So it's just like that's a huge part of just being like, okay, it's more like, what do I get to do this year?
Right.
Yeah. Because I can only pick like 4 things.
It's true.
To do.
Imagine being like an actor though, or like on like the whole movie front, and it's like you get a project done, and now you got 2 years you got to wait,
dude.
And then you got to start talking about that again.
I couldn't imagine. No, yeah. You finish your project,
right?
You tour like 3-6 months talking about the goddamn thing,
Yeah.
doing interviews over and over and over again. Hope to God you get a gig
Right.
that's going to pay you enough to even put you on one of these dreadful tours to talk about it. It's rough.
It's rough, man.
It's rough.
It is. It is. But at the end of the day, you know, everyone was blessed if you're able to do that.
If you're able to do it, yeah,
You know?
exactly. No, and I mean that's absolutely what makes it worth all of the bullshit. Is just like, you know, like you know, I feel like, yeah, and I'm sure you'll agree. It's like there's a compulsion that people do not understand.
Yep.
That you're just like, I cannot see my life without having finished this, and I must.
Right.
You know, like how many fucking jobs have you sacrificed? How many girlfriends? How many fucking all the time?
That's a good point.
Get-togethers.
Yeah.
Like, do you have to constantly sacrifice to people that don't really understand that you're like, I have to work, and this, I know it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah, dude. Like I tell my wife, I was like, all right, if we're gonna get engaged here, I need you to agree to a couple things.
Yeah.
One thing is that I'm not gonna give up my music.
Yeah.
So you're not secondary to my music, but you're in parallel with it. So
Exactly.
you got to understand that.
Yeah. And it is. It's just like, but I mean, it's like there's countless relationships. I'm just like, see ya.
Right.
You know, and heartache and all these different things. But if it wasn't, if like when you get a vision or you hear something in your head, if it wasn't so fucking compelling,
Yeah.
you know, then I guess people like are okay sleeping without without going down that rabbit hole.
Right.
But I am not. I'm just not.
Yeah,
I'm just like, I have to go down this.
And I think people like you are more important now than ever, because with such short attention spans, with such short like, oh, I'm gonna get famous off YouTube, and people just like identify with only happy things, right? They don't identify with, okay, we need these people to go in and do the hard stuff and do the stuff people don't want to do to create the things that everyone expects these days.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that it's I'm really hoping for, because of the technological advancements, it's like same for the guitar, right? It's the cheapest goddamn instrument.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's portable.
Yep.
You know, and so I feel like culture in a positive way overall, the world has changed because of the technological advancement of the guitar and the Industrial Revolution being able to like pump these out. And it might be, you know, there's like obviously downsides, you know, all this stuff, but the reality is like it put something that, you know, like made people connect to themselves and the rest of the world like at a deeper level in more people's hands. So now that, you know, we're able to like, you know, write music on our phones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm hoping that at the very least it's like more, you know, like, you know, kids like myself, like who, you know, grew up, you know, like poor, you know what I mean? Have that availability, because it wasn't. You know, I mean, fucking finale notation now is such a pain in the ass. In 5 fucking years, it's going to be like a game, like Math Blasters.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, that's what they did to guitar. They made it into a
Musician,
game.
did you see that shit?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is.
And
It
it's just
is.
like, if it can make people more connected to themselves and, you know, the rest of the world, and feel like they can have some type of like spiritual conversation in some way, even if it's subconscious, then that's better.
Yeah.
You know, like it really is. And then obviously, you know, people who are absolutely compelled, they're going to rise to the surface and have this insane power that we're having to be like, you know, like you have a kid, right?
I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
I don't.
Well, it's amazing. It's like my daughter like is able to do all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, like I didn't grow up with computers, you know, like in the way that she is. So it's just like,
Like, hold on. How'd you do that?
Yeah. Whoa. You made Siri's voice Australian.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it is. It's like just growing up with that, and then that being in the background. Oh, yeah. You know, so these kids growing up, it's like, did you see the console one? I don't mean to be all super techie. Have you seen this yet?
Uh-uh.
So I just got this fucking thing. Get it? It is a badass piece of gear. It's fucking amazing. Console 1 by Softtube.
Okay.
And so what this does is it creates a plugin that is a mixer that you're able to go like, I want to put some reverb on that. Wink. Or whatever.
Huh.
All kinds of 4-band EQ,
Yeah.
all these different things. So it makes things crazy creative. And like, I'm putting more drive on this channel,
Yeah.
all these different things. I'm, switching between, I want to get track, whatever, 56 or whatever.
What?
It gets you away from the mouse.
Huh. I was wondering when that was going to actually happen.
Starting to. But I subscribe to Sound on Sound.
Yeah.
And so I read about this piece of gear, and then everyone at fucking NAMM loved it. And so I was like, I started to check it out and saw these tutorials. And it was like every tech person that they sent this out to first was like, this is amazing.
Wow.
And I was like, son of a bitch, I better get this thing. And it's easy to fucking use.
That's crazy.
It's easy.
Console 1.
Console 1, Softtube. This would be my first like actual plug of like not unpaid for, but still it's such a badass piece of gear.
Nice.
That it's just like. But anyways, what I'm saying is just like it's all that technology that we've had to work with that was so difficult, so not intuitive. Not made by musicians. It's software people.
Right.
It's these musicians going like, "Can you do it like this?" And then these software people being like, "Sure, whatever, I'll do this thing."
Yeah.
But it's like with like Universal Audio, they're modeling. It's like all this. It's crazy, but being able to go like, what the 11 rack. It's like all of this shit that these kids are gonna have. Like, boom, here it is. This is all I need is a fucking iPad type of thing.
Yeah.
That's like now like holographic,
Yeah,
like that's what they're gonna grow up with.
You're absolutely right. I mean, half of these tutorial videos I see are these kids who are like 14, haven't even hit puberty yet.
Dude.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm learning this from a kid.
Exactly. Exactly. But they're just like, that's what they grew up with.
Yeah.
And a lot of those kids who are making those beat videos, like that's what their dads do.
True. That's true. Even like just like trying to work in like Final Cut or something.
Dude.
Man. I remember when I was like, I need to figure out how to do this weird thing in Final Cut. Found this video and this kid starts talking like this.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Here we go.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, absolutely.
And it's funny because at one, because it's like, okay, they have this knowledge, but they don't really know how to disseminate it concisely yet.
Exactly.
So,
it's just everything. Everything they know about this thing just all comes out. But so depressing about Final Cut when I learned how to use Final Cut. And then quickly after that, I realized that there is no upgrade to Final Cut or anything because it's like no one works in Final Cut.
Right.
They all work in Adobe
Premiere.
I was like, what the
Yeah.
but you got Final Cut, you were like, yeah. And then you just like, whatever, how many, different projects later, you're like, shit. I have to learn another one of these things.
Yep.
Are you, I mean, I haven't even graduated to Premiere yet. I haven't
either. No,
yeah.
No.
I'm still like, whatever, this is doing its
what I
job
needed to do at this
right
point in
now.
time. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Promo reels.
Yeah, dude. Oh, man. Every time I go into a different studio, I was like, all right, so what DAW do you have?
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn how to use Audition today. I'm going to learn how to use Logic. Or,
I know.
Cubase, Studio One, Digital Performer.
Yeah. DP, man. That's like, it's, I mean, and it all becomes like that's the thing is, you're like, okay, cool. As long as I can set up some tracks,
Right.
aux tracks,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
And I know your input-output routing system.
Yep.
Fine.
You got to get started.
Then you got to get started.
Yeah.
Exactly. I can track. Exactly. I can track.
Yep.
Being able to go like, oh shit, I can set up like this machine studio and my like MIDI and all my VSTs, all my all of that software is all working together at the same time. I'm triggering the audio from Native Instruments, into Pro Tools and being able to separate them out by track.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, finally it's all working. And then you're still just like, I'm base level shit.
Right. You're like, oh, it's 10% of everything I could really know.
I know.
It's like an Ableton.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, I got to figure it out. I got Ableton figured out. What? I could do that? Wait a second. I could do that now too?
I know.
Oh, man.
I know.
It's amazing and humbling at the same time.
It is really humbling.
Yeah.
It's which is like, I feel like that's, like what it's very like Jedi, you know, where it's like, you know, you always realize how much there is to know,
Right.
So that it is humbling. You're just like, you know, goddamn, I can learn from this 12-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What the fuck do I know?
Yeah.
I know some stuff, but this 12-year-old,
Right.
That's who I'm learning from right now
Goes back to what
today.
you're talking about. What can they offer me?
Exactly.
They can offer me something I'm not a master at.
I
And
know
they
the
are.
master, then
Yeah.
bow down.
Yeah.
Fucking A, man.
Cool, man. Well, dude, we've been talking for a while.
What time
I
is it?
definitely enjoyed talking with you, man. It's like, what, 3 o'clock.
Holy
Yeah,
shit.
almost 3 hours.
That's a fucking good interview.
Yeah, dude.
Goddamn, dude. Let me show you some theory stuff.
Yes.
Is that cool? I just grabbed this.